All right. Podcast is going to start in 3, 2, 1. Howdy there. Welcome to the Sounds Like Mike podcast. Gonna talk about some camera gear. Why do you look so distressed? You're supposed to be in this, you're the best. Let's hear some lyrics from you, Brianna. Something about cameras, maybe go.
I know nothing about cameras.
Was that bad? Should we do that again? I kind of like missed it at the start. And I like left the big long pause. Anyway, we don't have an intro song. So that's our intro song for today. And maybe next time it'll be different. Maybe.
Hopefully.
We got a really good show today. Today we're talking about how I got all this camera gear. Basically, one of the questions that I get most often, just when I'm working with other people on set, I get messages on Instagram. People are like, how the fuck do you have so much camera gear? And that's not a brag, but it is a humble brag. And so basically, I'm going to tell you sort of how I accrued all this gear. And it's not necessarily as simple as just buying it over time, in my opinion. A lot of people tell you that it takes a lot of time to build up your camera gear collection, so you just got to be patient and stuff. And that's true, but there's a lot of strategy involved that will get you accelerating up that ladder a lot faster. And there's also a lot of ways that you can make money off of that gear and use that to, leverage for opportunities and stuff. So camera gear is, a very complex subject, but I think if you listen to this podcast all the way through, you'll have a much better idea of how you can leverage it and, stop being so stressed about your camera gear and actually start using it to your advantage in your career, start making money with it. So it's going to be real fun and interesting. So basically, we're going to go down memory lane a little bit on a bunch of projects that I've done. I need some tea. A bunch of projects that I've done over the years, basically from the start to now, just kind of talking about my upgrades, talking about why I made those upgrades, when I learned what I learned, and sort of how I leveraged all that shit to eventually make a career. And a big part of it is the gear. Like, just being frank, there's a lot more talented people out there than me that are not doing as well. And there's a reason for that. So stick around. Before we get into that, also, we're going to do, if we have time, depending on how long this takes, we're going to get into the stock photo Pictionary game, which we described it last time. It's going to be a lot of fun. We'll give you a rundown of that when it happens, if it happens. If this doesn't take too long. So that's going to come at the end. It's going to be a lot of fun.
So stick around to find out.
Before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit about the Black Lives Matter movement. Obviously, this is something that's, flooded the news lately. I even talked with you a little bit about, like, should I even do an episode? Should I dedicate an entire episode to Black Lives Matter? Is it, like, shitty of me to sort of just cover it at the start a little bit? But I think, first of all, I'm just going to justify why I'm not making a whole episode about it rather than just talking about it. I'm going to make it about myself. Not a lot of people watch this show. I'm still figuring out the format, but I still think it's an important subject to talk about, so that's why I want to bring it up. But I just don't think people want to hear some 20-year-old talk about Black Lives Matter for an hour when he doesn't really have a lot of knowledge about it.
20-ish.
20-ish. I'm 24. All right.
Two 20-ish year old white people.
Right. Anyway, I just wanted to say that I haven't posted a lot about it because, honestly, I didn't really have a good grasp on the issues. Genuinely. I feel like even like when the words Black Lives Matter was coming up back in the day, a few years ago, I was very much like, I understand and acknowledge that, a lot of Black people specifically have been disadvantaged because they come from, this era of being disadvantaged. They were slaves, right? And that carries on throughout society. You start poor, it's going to be a lot harder to get a leg up in society generally. I know that there's a lot more nuances to that, but in my perspective, from my perspective, I was like, I started out poor and I ended up fine. And I understand it's hard for everybody else. And not everyone can overcome those kinds of obstacles. And especially if there's like a large group of people that start out poor, likelihood is that they're going to continue to be poor. There's going to be more crime and all this stuff. But I didn't really realize how much the color of your skin really affected the way that you're treated in society, and how much I have had a leg up, even though I did start in like from a fairly disadvantaged upbringing, how much I've had a leg up just because I'm a white guy. So yeah, that's it. I just thought I would acknowledge it, and I think that I support the protesters. I think y'all should be protesting. I don't necessarily know too much about how effective it is to defund the police. I think lower funding and I think allocating it to other places is good. I don't necessarily know about abolishing police. I'm not saying I disagree with it. I'm literally just saying I don't know. I'm doing my best to get educated on it, but in terms of talking about it on my podcast as if I know what I'm talking about, I'm not going to do that. But there's a lot better resources that you can look up. There's a lot of people who are talking about it right now that are more informed than I am. And again, I'm trying to be more informed. But fight the good fight, y'all. That's all I'm trying to say. Anyway, like I said, we got a really good episode jumping in here, and I'm going to tell you all about how to get a shit ton of camera gear without spending any money, and how to leverage that camera gear to make more money and to move ahead in your career. So, I'm going to start off by giving some advice. Oh, and by the way, I just want to mention that Bree is a very relevant part of this, in my opinion, because she's been here throughout my entire journey of my filmmaking journey. Like, my entire professional career, she's been there helping me. If I didn't have anybody to help me on set, she would come in and just like be a boom operator. Even if she had no idea what she was doing, she would still jump in there and just be like, yes, I can do that for you. She's always been like a solid, just stable person to always be there whenever I need to. And she's done a lot of behind the scenes photos for me. She's done so many things for me on set. Honestly, she probably could not produce a short film, but she has a lot better set etiquette than a lot of beginners I know on set. So she's fantastic, and don't dismiss her just because she's not in the industry. She's been at this as long as I have, if in a smaller capacity.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the acknowledgement.
Yeah, I just don't want to make it feel like you're just like sitting here listening to me brag about all my camera gear that I bought, and you're just like, yep, you got a lot of gear. That's not what this is about. So anyway, when it comes to buying gear, there's a lot of, like I said, it is a slow build, but there's also a lot of strategy to it, and there's a few sort of guidelines that I live by, and you'll kind of see that throughout this podcast, and how that plays out and how you can leverage yourself and your gear. So basically, the main guidelines just on list form here is to, one, buy gear preemptively. So before you get the shoot, before you do the shoot that requires the gear, you buy it before that, not after that. You don't shoot, get $1,000, and then buy the thing. You buy the thing, and then you use it on the shoot. And there's a few ways you can do that without actually spending any money, or just making it a zero-sum game, or actually possibly paying it off and making some money. So that might mean being happy with taking $0 for the gig and just using all that money to buy the product, if you have that option. Or if you know what gear that you need on the shoot, like if you know what gear your client needs or wants, if they ask for something specific, or that this gear is going to require it, you can effectively buy it and rent it to them. And if it's a long enough shoot, you can often pay it off by the time the shoot's over. Or again, like I said, come to a zero-sum game. And then another thing is buying gear that other people want to rent. So that means when you're getting on sets with other people, when you're, even if you're just PAing, you don't even have to be making any money at this point. You can see what gear needs they have, what they're lacking. The DP might say like, oh man, I wish we had this, and you're like, oh, why didn't you get that? And they'll usually just be like, oh, it wasn't in the budget. You can look into that. You can find out if there's a cheaper option available that they would be willing to rent, or you can find out if it would be cheap enough to just buy and rent, even if it's like the expensive thing. I've done that a few times, which you'll see in the future. Another way to do it is to buy gear that you never have to upgrade. Often gear that's going to last you your entire career is very, very worth it, and ultimately leads to you gaining money, especially if you're renting it to productions that you're on. So if you own a piece of gear that you're never going to have to upgrade, which there are quite a few of gears, like a C-stand. You can rent a C-stand out 1,000,000 times over, and it's likely never going to break. The only way it's going to break is if, and when I say rent it out, I mean with you on the set. It's not like you have to find people who are willing to just rent your gear or whatever. You don't have to become a rental house. You can rent to your friends. You can rent it to local film connections. A lot of people don't want to own that kind of stuff, but if you do, you can make a lot of money off of it. C-stand's what, $100? Super, super easy to pay off. So that's one thing that you can do. You rent it with to the production when you're on set. You can rent it to other people on their own sets. And then finally, I think one of the most important things is to buy expensive things or buy cheap things, and do not buy the in-between thing, in my opinion. So that means buy the thing that's going to last you your entire career, or buy the cheap thing that is essentially disposable until you can buy that expensive thing. Because if you end up buying the middle of the road thing, like let's say, like recently, I was looking at gimbals. We keep talking about gimbals. The reason why I always talk about gimbals is because I don't own a gimbal. I've thought about buying a gimbal a million times over, but it's a lot, but it's never, and I've come very close, but it's never lined up with the right shoot. I've never been able to like justify paying it off. The only way I'm going to buy something like that that's really expensive is if I know that I'm going to use it all the time and it's going to pay itself off. Gimbals are so widely available now, it's never going to pay itself off. In my opinion, a gimbal is a great investment if you want to shoot music videos forever. You know, low budget music videos forever, which is fine. But if you're shooting high budget music videos, eventually you're going to start renting stuff. You're going to be renting cameras that are too big for your gimbal. Not saying gimbals are always a bad thing, but I just haven't been able to justify it in the type of work that I do. If I were to buy a gimbal right now, something that has like the weight limit for my camera, I would have to spend a fair amount of money. Like I'd have to spend like $1,200, let's say, like 12 to $1,300 if I wanted it, like just the gimbal. Something that's going to go with my camera that I could feasibly use on other sets. The likelihood of me paying that gimbal off is so low because I just know the types of the types of shoots that I get, which is mostly, at least the ones that pay well, are mostly commercial and corporate. And then they're not going to pay. I don't need the gimbal for those. I know that I don't need the gimbal for those. And then when it comes to productions that I work on as a camera assistant, which is like another one of my bread and butters, they are shooting on things that are way beyond any kind of gimbal that I would afford on my own. Like I'd have to own like a Ronin 2, which is how much? Like $50,000, maybe $30,000, $20,000. It's very, very expensive. So buying a gimbal in my world, it's like, it doesn't make any sense. I would have to buy a really, really cheap gimbal that the cost would not affect me at all. Whereas I could buy it and not have to think about paying it off, and it would just be a personal use gimbal. Or I'd have to buy the really, really expensive gimbal that I know people are going to rent. Because if I buy a middle in the road one, it's going to be a lot of money for me personally. I'm not going to use it very often, just knowing my own workflow.
It's not going to rent.
And it's not going to rent because people are either going to rent the really, really high one, or they're going to own their own cheap one. So that is something really to consider when you're buying gear, is like, buy expensive, buy something that's as future-proof as possible. It's always best to buy up. I know it's easy to say, buy expensive things and you'll be successful. But really, like, it really is the difference between like saving up for like a few months or even half a year versus buying it right now. You're better off renting right now, unless you know you're going to use it a lot. That's another thing when it comes to renting. I'm kind of going off track here, but if you, we'll get into this a little bit. I'll use my Dana Dolly as an example. Actually, you know what? No, we'll get to that in a bit. I'm rambling a little bit. I got a bunch of interesting visuals. I'm going to show you some of the old shoots that I've been on. I'm going to show you a bunch of the, like all my old kits and everything. So let's just take a trip down memory lane. I've done with the intro. Those are the main principles of it, in terms of like learning how to leverage your gear. It sounds a bit complex, but it'll hopefully make sense by the end of this podcast. And it's also completely dependent on the way that you shoot and the kind of stuff that you shoot now and the kind of stuff that you want to shoot. So we're going to go over a brief history of camera setups and upgrades, and and at the end, we're also going to talk about my most profitable purchases, the best camera gear that I've ever owned. This is the stuff that I bought that's still making me money, or that has skyrocketed my career in some way. I'm not saying that I'm like up there skyrocketed, but you know what I'm saying. So anyway, first, bolstered, exactly. So back in the days of 2014 and 2015, this is where I'm starting my gear journey, I'm going to call it. Oh, I forgot about the soundboard again. Oh, let's go back all the way back. to 2014, 2015, the early days of Michael Manis, way long before I was able to grow a mustache. It was some of the first freelance projects I've ever done. I at this point I'd already been sort of working on sets. I kind of understood like set etiquette. I wasn't making any money in film at this point, but I did.
You'd gone to TVI.
Yeah, I went to like a film camp thing for a little bit, a couple of years before that. So yeah, and this is when I first started making money and when my career officially started. So this is when I was full-time film. So you're gonna see what I started out with and that I was making full-time money with this garbage kit, and it's gonna blow your mind. Maybe. By today's standards, it's absolutely garbage. So I got a bunch of Facebook ones here. So this is my first lighting kit. This is the lighting kit. This is what I used on all my stuff. I got 2 Lowell Omnis, which these are hot lights. So they get, self-explanatory. They get very, very hot. And they're also orange, and they have horrible, horrible light rendition. So they make your subjects, if you're shining on a person, they look like shit. Okay. But this should paint a picture of how little the specific gear really matters. It just matters that you're covering your bases at the start, in my opinion. And this is a good example of buying low. Because this stuff, to buy it brand new, I bought this used. I bought it for $200, and I kind of lay it out here that it would cost $700 to buy new. And I was working at a coffee shop at the time, so I didn't really like have money.
Big budget.
Right, exactly. So in my opinion, this was like one of the best purchases I ever made was this lighting, because I knew it was industry standard. Like they at the time they were pro lights. I mean, they still technically are pro lights, but especially for my the day. I had diffusion. They came with these umbrellas, dichroic filters, which I never used. These basically convert your tungsten light into daylight balanced light. And then the guy also threw in this like really shitty slider that he made. This guy made this slider like just out of like stuff he found at Home Depot, as far as I know. So that was my first kit. That I also was shooting. I was shooting on a Canon Rebel T3i. My lens kit consisted of not the kit lens, because I broke the kit lens.
Oh, man.
So for a lot of the first projects I didn't even have the kit lens. I had 3 vintage primes, and they were Pentax, and at the time they were a lot cheaper to buy because people didn't really know about reusing your old lenses on new cameras.
Find them at the thrift store.
I found them at the thrift store for $5 each. I got a 50, a 28, and I had a zoom. I think my brother let me borrow the zoom. But that was and they like the colors didn't match at all. Like they one was really green and one was like a little sharper and like less hazy than the green one, And then the telephoto was like fine in most cases, but if it had a little bit of light shining on it, it it became super hazy and super green, and they were like it looked like garbage. But I had a lens kit, and I had primes, and they were fast, and it pushed me to learn how to pull focus. Anyway, there was no autofocus and shit, and it was a T3i. So T3i, autofocus was not an option. I had a Manfrotto tripod that I invested in a little while ago, which again, I'm just going to cover this as it comes up. The Manfrotto tripod, it's going to be on my list later, but that's definitely one of the best purchases I've ever made, because I bought it, I think probably in 2013, and I bought it in like 2013, and I'm still using it on shoots. It was a high quality tripod. It was way more expensive than what I could afford at the time, like just way more expensive. But the comparable tripods and cheaper tripods I would have had to rebuy it again, and I would have ended up spending like double what I spent. I spent $200 on it. I think it was like $125 on the head. And for someone who had no job at the time, I think I worked. My dad had a restaurant. I worked like a whole summer just to afford this tripod. Or he had a catering business. Sorry, I worked a whole summer just to afford this tripod. But that has been one of my best investments. I'm still using it right now. It's on this camera, the one that you see Brie on right now. So fantastic investment. So I got the low lights. I had a Rode video mic. I had a painter's pole as a boom pole.
I remember the tripod that you had before the Manfrotto.
Yeah,
it was like so janky.
I have a photo of it. I think I have a photo of it in here. Let me find it.
Didn't it have like some weird handle Like some hook from something else?
Yes. Let me show you right now. Let's see. I think this is it. Yes, this is it. You can see my old tripod. This is a tripod I had before it.
Yeah, see, there it is. The
Look at
little
it.
hook that's like
I lost the threading for it, so I put this like hook in it, so I could tighten the tripod down. It happened to be the exact same thread size, and I was
janky.
super fucking janky. Like, what was I doing? Luckily, I wasn't doing anything professional.
Oh yeah, and there's the comparison.
Yeah, and there's the new tripod. It was in 2013. I was right. Yeah, this was my old one.
Nice label.
Yeah. I can't remember where that label came from, but anyway, so clearly I think you get the picture that buying things that will last you forever is far, far more important than just having a thing in a lot of cases. Like that tripod that I started with was great to start with. It got me shooting my first things, but it eventually broke. And if I were to just rebuy that again, it would break down again. And ultimately, if you're making your first purchase, if you sort of know what you need, it doesn't have to be a tripod. Like, let's say it's a light stand or something. Buy the really, really cheap one first. Buy the $5 light stand first. I'm still using my $5 light stands because they just work. They're simple. You put lights on them and they're fine. But if it breaks, no sweat off your back.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you get something that's sort of mid-range, it's not going to be as durable as the big one. Eventually, you're just going to have to upgrade. You're going to end up spending double the money. Not worth it, in my opinion. So that's a great example of that, is the tripod. So let's see. Canon Rebel T3i, Pinterest poll, cheap Amazon light stands. Oh yeah, so $5 light stands. And everything I carried everything in milk crates at this point.
Right.
So that's sort of setting the stage for where I started. And this was like, I think here's a shot. Here's a shot of all of it set up. This was a free shoot I did for a guy named Bobby Izat. There he is there. He was, there's the tripod, there's the T3i, and that was one of the vintage lenses on there. I have my mic here on a stand. There's one of those shitty lights. I think altogether the kit was probably under $1,000, like with everything combined, and that was accrued over, a couple of years of like just being a kid and like, getting money through, not even birthdays, like working for my dad for that thing, and then eventually getting a job at a coffee shop, and then I finally had enough money to start jumping a career. So that's how I started my career, was literally like doing shit like that. And then I had that, making connections here, doing a free shoot for this guy. And then this was the first time that this was like the first big shoot that I did, in my opinion. This was like the first like crude shoot that I actually hired crew for, which is funny because Bree was on it. Of course, like I said, Bree was on like all these shoots. And it was also the first time I had ever rented anything. So this is when I realized that a lot of times when it comes to buying gear, especially if you're using it, if you know that you're not going to be using it a lot, it's worth it to rent. A lot of people don't really understand the importance of renting. I find people are always just like, it's always, like I said, it's like, you do the shoot, you buy the thing. You do the shoot, you buy the thing. And in my opinion, that's a fast way to losing a fuck ton of money.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the worst thing you can do, because you're always just going to be chasing the next piece of gear, and you're always going to have $0. So here, I realized I could get them to rent shit. I wanted a big production, and all I did was I just told them, I was like, hey, this is what I need to do this shoot. Here's my price. And I think that at the time the price was like $300, which was huge to me. I was like, holy fuck, $300. But that was my price. I was like, I need $300, and then I need these things to rent. And I was stupid, and I didn't include that on my invoice. They literally like contacted the rental company for me and like put their credit card down because I didn't have a credit card.
Didn't have a credit card.
These, by the way, these is like I just need to acknowledge these guys. These are like my favorite client ever. They're still my client. I still make amazing stuff with them. Bree's still there every time we shoot, and
they're awesome.
No, they're the best client ever. And they put up with my shit at the first thing. So I rented this lens. They put it on their credit card, which is crazy. But that's the thing, is you just tell them how much it's going to cost, and then you decide where that money's going to go. You can say, I could have said that this one cost $1,200. They probably wouldn't have hired me. Let's say they did hire me. I could say, oh, it costs $1,200. And I could have just bought a new camera. They don't have to know that I don't already own that camera.
Mm-hmm.
They just have to know that it costs $1,200. Or I could have bought this. I could have just bought like a microphone or something like that, and it could have cost me like $200. And then the rest of it, the $1,000 could have been profit. You know what I mean? You can do that. That's a way to strategically buy gear, is you can put the cost of the new gear into the job. if it's big enough, you can put in a lot of like big gear into it. If it's long enough, you can just buy gear, not make it a part of it, and just rent it to the production. You just say, okay, you just say, this is how much it's going to cost. Here's the gear rental fee, and you just include your new piece of gear in it. You're like, okay, I want to rent this gear for $25 a day. We're shooting for this many days, whatever. It's going to take me this many days to pay it off. Come up with a rental fee, do it. You pay off the gear.
Boom.
Boom. And when I say it, it sounds a little slimy. That's the way the fucking industry works. You can charge whatever you want. They don't have to say yes, as long as you're delivering a satisfying product and as long as you're following through. That's the main thing. In my opinion, charge whatever you want, do whatever you want with the money, as long as you're following through and you're giving them a product that's satisfied and you're not pulling the wool over their eyes. Like, you have to be able to justify the cost as well. It's not like you can go out and buy a car with your price. I feel like I maybe slid down that path a little bit, but they're going to ask. There's huge potential for them to ask where the rental money's going.
Yeah.
And it's important for you to be honest. You just say, oh, okay, I'm renting you this piece of equipment because, it costs you money to bring out that piece of equipment. I rent my camera to productions all the time because it's a fairly expensive camera. And, use equals wear and tear. It equals hours, devalues the product overall, and it pays off the product. They're not just hiring you, you're hiring all your gear. Like, I have a personal day rate that doesn't include my gear.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're buying gear and when you get a new job, it's worth considering. When you're buying the gear, you're like, how can this gear advantage me in jobs that are coming up? And when you get a job, it's how can this job lean towards some gear purchase of some kind? How can I justify some sort of gear purchase? I bought filters once. I bought filters. Actually, it was with Shay. We bought filters as part of the shoot. We said, we need these filters. We did. We were shooting outside. We were like, fuck, what are we gonna do we need ND filters for the shoot. Otherwise, it's gonna look like shit. We don't have any ND filters, so we were just like, okay, this is, we charge this to the client. We say this is what it's gonna take for us to shoot it, and then we use it to buy ND filters. So anyway, this is the first time I rented anything. Rented that light. They rented this dolly. I also owned some sandbags, it looks like. But this boom pole right here on the ground, that's a painter's pole, which is very exciting. That's just a modified painter's pole. I got like a bag. I think that was my audio bag. Like, there was just audio gear.
Yeah, it's just like a Vans like drawstring backpack.
Yeah, like one you'd wear on your backpack or back or whatever. I still have that bag, but it's funny because, that was my audio bag. And then this case I got at the thrift store also, like, super lucky. It had foam in it and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then look, milk crates. Like, I stored all my shit in milk crates. There's Zach. This guy was helping us on the shoot. He's a good guy, old friend. Oh, and by the way, that $300, I didn't finish that little part of the story. When they paid me that $300, not only was it incredibly exciting, but it mostly went to paying a ticket. I was borrowing my mom's van, and I got a ticket on the van during the shoot because I didn't pay for parking like some idiot because I didn't understand the city. I got a ticket on the van, and then I had to pay you, and I also paid him, and so after that I had $0. Like, I was completely like zero-sum game for that one, but it also opened huge doors with this client.
Huge, yeah.
Like, we've made so many cool things. They're one of my favorite clients. Specifically Dominic Venturo, the guy who runs the law firm. He's very creative. He's very fun to work with.
Yeah, one of the parts.
Yeah. I do owe a huge part of my career to those guys. But it was all really because I was starting to understand how I could leverage my gear realistically. It was about the gear, in my opinion. I wouldn't have been able to do this with just my own gear. And I personally, even if it was nowadays, I would still rent that dolly over a gimbal because that's what the shot required. It wouldn't have made sense to purchase anything on this shoot. I wouldn't have got the gig.
Yeah.
So that's that's the beginnings. The first, the early little history. Here's a project that I shot with the gear, just so you can sort of see that it doesn't all come from nothing. This is like a very old music video that I did. I think this is the first music video I ever did. We're not gonna watch the whole thing. As you can see, the lighting is it's terrible. I don't know if we can play this music, so I'm just gonna mute it. This was in the coffee shop that I actually used to work at. and she let me come in.
Yeah, the owner.
Yeah, Jessie.
Yeah.
She let me come in. She let me come in on the off times. Should we be saying everyone's first name? Pamela let us into the coffee shop.
Jessie is a pretty generic name.
You're right. It's made up. It's not a real name. Anyway, so look at this shot. This was done with those 2 LOL lights. Really insanely cheap lighting setup. Like ridiculously insanely cheap. And actually, before I filmed this podcast, I was looking at what could I get nowadays for $200 on Amazon.
It was insane.
Yeah, like if you're starting out, just cover your bases. You don't need to go crazy. Don't worry about the best and the best.
You don't need to get like a 300.
Yeah, but don't get middle of the line. Understand what middle of the line is. Like if you're going for audio, for example, the Rode Link lavs are fucking terrible. They're huge. They're super unreliable. Just because they have Rode attached to them, they're horrible in my opinion. I love Rode, but it's a shit product. You're better off just having a wired lav. You know, wired lav costs nothing on Amazon. You can get a wired lav for $10. Plug it, get a long extension for it, and plug it right into your camera. Little janky, but you do 1 gig and you can afford Sennheiser G3s. Sennheiser G3, still affordable, but incredibly reliable. It'll last your whole career. I have Sennheiser G3s. I bought them a few years ago. I know plenty of professional sound guys that still use them, but I mean, it could be something else. But you get the idea. Buying middle of the road, in my opinion, you just run into problems with those roads. You'd be like, fuck, I have to replace these now. You know, waste of money. More money you save on each shoot, the more money you're making, obviously. But let's see what you can get for $200. I'm just looking at the word 200.
$200.
Let's just look up video lights. Video lights on Amazon. I wonder if there's any sketchy shit in my recommendations. Let's see. No, it's just camera gear. I don't know. Sometimes Amazon recommends crazy stuff. Okay. Anyway. Let's see.
There's lower. There's like soft
Where?
boxes.
Oh,
shit.
Yeah, these ones. $75. Look, it's got 4 inputs. You can get ones that come with bulbs. Let's do video lights. Video light kit. $60. This one's $131 for these 2 freaking lights. $131. That's insane. It comes with a case. It comes with it's ready to go out of the fucking box. Listen, it's not as convenient to set up as the expensive lights, but it's also dirt fucking cheap. And you might look at that and say, "Oh, $131. I don't have $131." Listen, man. Client contacts you. "Hey, I need this video shoot. I'll give you $1,200 for it." Guess what? Now you have $200. You fucking borrow that $200 from somebody or something. When you confirm the shoot and you know that you can get this gear in time, that's very important. Confirm the shoot as fast as you can. You don't need a contract. Your email is your contract. I've talked about that in another episode. Buy the fucking lights. $131 out of that $1,200. Nothing. Or just do a shoot for really cheap. Approach somebody. Post an ad on Kijiji or Craigslist. I know that's how I got my first gigs. Was all through Craigslist or Kijiji. It's the Canadian version of Craigslist. A little less sketchy, so I don't know. But $131, you can easily leverage yourself to have these. You don't have to tell them that you need these lights. Just say, this is what it's going to cost. Buy the fucking lights and go shoot it. Like, anyway, yeah. Don't shoot, buy, because otherwise you're never going to have enough gear. You're never going to have the gear to do what you want. You're just
going to be broke.
You're just, yeah, I mean, not even broke. You're just not going to do very many interesting things. Like, let's say I had a Canon Rebel T3i. Just the T3i. I don't have any lights. And the only way that I can get money is, one, my job at the coffee shop and through video shoots. Coffee shop job, minimum wage. I could easily buy $200. Let's say I'm working part-time, okay? So I have like a little bit of money. Let's say I have exactly $200 and rent is due, I don't know, just after the shoot. That makes it a little convenient. I'm coming up with horrible analogies. You get money any other way. Basically, someone comes up to you, wants you to do a shoot, and all you have is T3i, but you know you can look at the shoot and you know what you need. You're like, oh, I'm going to need like at least 3 other crew members. I'm going to need a tripod. I'm going to need some lights. Just give them your fee. Just say, this is how much it's going to cost, $1,200. Even if you only have a T3i, they're trusting you to fulfill their product. And if you're confident that you can fulfill their product, say yes and just buy the shit or borrow it, you know? If you have friends that do video and stuff, chances are you do, because it's so just common now. Someone's gonna have a light. So anyway, that's that. That illustrates my point. And like, look, you can see these lights, $200, and they were way shittier than lights you can get today. Like so much shittier. And to me, I would like that's still a nice shot. I would include some of these frames on my reel. The only reason why I don't is because I just want to include new stuff. But like
nude stuff.
But like
that's a whole other demo reel.
That's coming out later. But like this performance stuff looks good in my opinion. This stuff doesn't look that good. I didn't really know how to like deal with light at the time. Excuse me. But clearly, I leveraged my way into this effectively. And you can too. So let's move on past the 2014, 2015, the early days, so I've called it. And now, is this a flashback or is this a title sound? The formative years, so I've titled it 2015, 2016. So at this point, I've moved out of my house. I'm not making money off of film yet, but I have done, I did that freelance gig. I ended up moving to Calgary. And then I did get a job at a corporate video production company called Kicker, which was super, super lucky. I had put together a demo reel of just a bunch of random crap, not relevant to this episode. And then another thing is working at this job helped me not have to buy gear. That's another thing, is if you can put yourself in situations where you either know people that have gear, which the way you do that is just just PA on sets. And if you're not borrowing anything too expensive, people will often let you borrow it. Just borrow a light or something like, hey, can I borrow that light? People are very willing to help out people who are starting out in the industry. Don't ask me to borrow anything. I'm going to say no. Unless I already know you, I'm not giving you anything. You got to work on my set. If you work on my set, then maybe.
You have to build the rapport.
You got to build the rapport. That's the thing.
You can't just be like, hey, let me borrow that expensive thing.
Exactly. Yeah. So I was working at this production company, and they had like some lights, and they were about the same quality as those Amazon lights. They took forever to set up. They were soft boxes. They weren't like super bright, but if you were shooting inside, they were like plenty bright. You could get a good interview out of them, or like just like something basic. And that's sort of when I started to pick up some momentum with my career, because I was able to borrow those lights, and I was getting a little bit of opportunities through that job, just in meeting other like filmmakers and understanding how like corporate video worked and how to produce something and how to organize a crew. So at this point, now that I was like getting a little bit of money, I had sort of like a regular job in film. I ended up upgrading to an A7S, which was, I've talked about this as well. The upgrade to the A7S, that's a really good example of where I just did not leverage gear well at all. Because I had the opportunity to, a big part about leveraging your gear purchases is understanding how that gear will fit into other people's workflow. Because a big part of making money off your gear and continuing to use that gear in the future is letting other people rent it, or shooting stuff, like even if you're shooting it with your own, like you're just shooting with it, it's good to know that it fits into other people's workflow, because then they'll hire you. They'll hire you for B-cam or whatever, or they'll just hire you to shoot something knowing that your stuff will look similar to theirs, or they'll send you out to get B-roll. You never know. It's just a safe bet to sort of fit into the workflow of the professionals in your local industry, just sort of where you're working at the time. Like literally just like in your city or your town or whatever. That's really, really important, or where you want to work. The A7S, although it was a really good camera, did not fit into any of the workflow at all. It was a brand new camera at the time. Nobody was using it. And I bought it used, which is fine. But I had the opportunity to buy C100 for the exact same price. And the C100 was a professional film camera, internal XLRs, internal NDs. It was just way, way better workflow.
Just standard.
It was the standard. And I should have fucking bought it. And I didn't know enough about the film industry. I didn't talk to enough professionals at that point to know how stupid a decision that was. If I had bought the C100, like I say all the time, I definitely would have been way ahead in my career.
Mm-hmm.
But it's good to have regrets because you can learn from them. You learn from those mistakes, and hopefully you guys are learning from my mistakes. I upgraded to a Tamron 24-70. I ended up buying this because that was definitely a workflow decision. I wanted to be faster. Tamron 24-70 2.8. I was working on I was using these vintage primes up until this point. Like I got my way into an actual career in film just on a T3i, vintage primes, and a $200 light kit that was used in garbage. So this isn't really that supposed to be about my story or anything. It's just ending up being. So I got a 24 to 70, fit more into the workflow that I was like seeing around corporate video and stuff. I could understand that like getting a zoom like that was far, far more important than getting like primes or anything. I see a lot of people buying primes these days that have no other kit. Just get a zoom. It works for everything. It's great. So I got a zoom. I was using Kicker's lights. I ended up buying an audio recorder, just kind of up my workflow. I bought a cheap wireless lav. See, this is the thing is like at the time there wasn't an option for a cheaper wireless lav. So I bought the cheapest lav that I could buy, which is like, again, just it's almost disposable. You're using it until you can afford something better. So I bought a cheap wireless lav. I ended up buying a real boom pole, which was a relatively good purchase. I mean, it doesn't really rent, but it's one of those things that kind of wins you favor on set. Like people are like, especially on indies, a lot of times people are kind of like, okay, what gear do we all have? You know, and so you send them your gear list, which you should have gear list if you're doing professional stuff, because it shows, you know, you can show people what you got so they can rent it or so they can hire you on their stuff. So I send them my gear list. You know, you got a boom pole. The sound guy uses the boom pole for the whole show. You get a $2 a day rental. You know, that's a huge. That's like an extra $100 that you need to have to work for. You know, depending on the shoot.
It's a long shoot.
Ever was pretty long. It was a whole summer. I don't know if I ended up renting it to them though. I think I just let them borrow it. But I did end up. Even then, even if they're not borrowing it, it's a piece of gear that I didn't really care about, but they really cared about it. So it won me favor with them. They liked it. And it was a constant joke on set that it was like my boom pole because it had my name on it. But it just builds rapport. It's good. It's a good thing to have, and it's a good way to move yourself in your career is to buy inexpensive things that will benefit you socially on set too. That's one thing that I did not write on this list. RoboCup is the best piece of gear you can get. That's not completely true. But I'm talking to camera. The RoboCup.
No, I'm pointing at the RoboCup sticker.
Oh, there's a RoboCup sticker on here. I'm gonna grab the RoboCup. But you say things.
I'm saying things so that there's no dead air. RoboCup is great. Yay.
Okay. I'm back.
There we go.
I gotta use the soundboard
right,
more.
I forgot about that too.
Okay, the RoboCup. You're gonna think this is a joke, and if you follow me on Instagram, you've seen the RoboCup on my story. I made like a couple funny videos about it. I also like bought like 100 of them as part of like a group buy. It was, but the RoboCup is literally it's just a cup holder that attaches to a pole of some kind. It's got these clamps, if you can see it. It's just it's got two cup holders and you attach it to a clamp. One, this is super functional for you personally if you do AC work or even if you're like grip, if you're just helping out on set at all. And they're very industry standard. People on the sets have them all the time. But also, if you get multiples of these or you just have one that you're willing to give to somebody else, it's a great way to win favor and make yourself look kind of bougie in a way. Like it sounds so stupid. But whenever I'm working on other sets, I have 3 RoboCups, I think. 3 RoboCups with these like extensions. I always bring them on set, not only because I personally enjoy them and it keeps the camera cart clean, but like if you're working with a director that you've never worked with, and you know, if you're in camera department and it's a small set, often, you know, the camera assistant's responsible for the director's monitor. Slap this boy on their stand for their monitor and they're instantly impressed. They're just like, whoa, that's sick. Whose is that? And you put a label with your name on it or something or your website so that, you know, so it doesn't get lost. Label your gear. People steal shit on set. But
so fancy.
Yeah, exactly. They're impressed. It sounds stupid, but buying little things, you know, RoboCup's not the most amazing piece of gear ever. Sorry, RoboCup. I love you. It is the most amazing piece of gear.
It definitely is the most.
But buying things that will socially push you forward on set is super valuable, especially if they're cheap. You know, like RoboCup. RoboCup's like it's like $30, I think. But if you're happy to spend $30, you know, on something like that, it's super durable. It'll last you forever, and it ups your sociability on set, and it lets people know that you know you're pro and that you care about the production and that you care about
you're a
them.
Team player.
Exactly. People like it, and it makes them feel like you value them too. So buying little things that, you know, bolster your social status on set in ways is really important. So boom pole, had the boom pole. Let that production use it. Anyway, so we're still in 2015, 2016. I bought a real boom pole. I bought like a bunch of little rigging for my camera. I bought some rails and stuff because, you know, in anticipation for those types of shoots where I would need a follow focus, where I'd need a shoulder rig, stuff like that. Didn't buy it preemptively. But I also did buy it preemptively, knowing that I was shooting things at the time that required shoulder rig. And same thing, I leveraged it to the production. And then I had a 2008 Mac Pro. It was like, at the time, it was old. It was like 2015, 2016. This thing was from 2008. And I was like editing all my shit on it. But I knew that I just need the bare minimum of editing to get me to the next level. Another reason why I keep hammering in that point is a lot of people they refuse to buy things until they can get the best version too, which I think is a mistake because you're just holding yourself back from more work. You never want a client to come to you and say, "Can you do this?" And then your response is no. Like that is the fucking worst. So at least having, you know, this 2008 Mac Pro, which at the time was very inexpensive and is still still functional today. I have two and they've broken through outside circumstances. They broke. This lap that I'm using right now is 2012. I don't use it for editing. I could use it for editing, and I have used it when I'm traveling, just to use proxies. Super fucking easy. I got a better computer though. Now, that's another thing we're gonna get into. So like at this time, this is sort of what the gear setup was looking at a little bit. It's almost the same, except you can see that I've got like a little bit more. I got the audio there. I've got new zoom lens. I've got some rigging on there. All very cheap rigging. I still use some of these rails sometimes, but and the cage I've used for monitors these days, but I don't really use most of this here. But the lens I'm still using right now. The lens exists right now. It's shooting Brie. Right now it's on the B cam. It's a little fucked up, but it still works perfectly fine. I still use these stands.
Milk crate.
I do not use the milk crate. Do I use the milk crate? Is there anything in milk crate in here?
I don't think.
I mean, they're good for organizing things, and I got it for free. I can't remember.
I'm just pointing it out because.
Yeah, I'm still shooting in milk crates at this point, as far as I know. I think I bought a Pelican case at the time. I had a Pelican case to carry the camera in. I had no idea how to configure it. Still shooting with the same lights, and I was also shooting with. Oh, and I bought these headphones, which is funny because they're over there on my desk, and I use them as, you know, for editing for a really long time. Another great purchase. I bought that one up in a way, even though they're really cheap headphones. At the time, they were like. I guess that is kind of a middle of the road thing. But headphones just work. If you know it's just going to continue working, you just buy it, you know? It's different depending on what you're buying, you know? Like I said, a C-stand will last you your entire career. It's fairly inexpensive, and you can rent it to a bunch of people. That is a super profitable thing to buy, which I don't own any of them. I own one, and I don't even know if that's technically mine. It's like shared. So maybe I should buy some C-stands.
Oh yeah, I guess it's got the something orange.
Yeah, that's shared in my business. But like as you can see, I've got this shit gear still, but I was able to shoot this interview with Brett Wilson. Brett Wilson, you know, he's got some negative political opinions lately. Regardless of what you think of him politically, you know, he's a fairly big figure, and for someone like me who was not used to interviewing big people at all, I didn't interview him. I just shot the interview. But when they approached me to shoot the interview, I wasn't like, oh, I don't know. I think I need to get this gear, and I think I need to get that gear. I was just like, yes, I'll do it. I'll do it. And I figured it out. And I figured it out. And it was basically the same kit. I think, oh, now I'm using my A7S in this one.
There's also a softbox in there.
There's a softbox. I think that was one that I borrowed from Kicker. Yeah. But essentially, and I had a lav on him. I think this might have been around the time that I bought this mic. Either way, you know, you just say yes. You say yes unless you actually don't think you can do it. If you think that you can do it, don't bring the client into the technical details of it. Just give him a price, buy the shit you need for it, and just fucking do it. Let's see what else we got. And then here's my computer setup at the time. Oh, and I upgraded to a Mac Pro at the time too. And this was the exact same because I was working at Kicker, and I needed a bigger computer. Essentially. And so I was like, yeah, I could do this. And I eventually just like used that money that I got from that to buy this computer. But it's not like I I don't know. This is kind of like a sidestep. This is not a really good example of it. But and then there's this laptop. Actually, this laptop I did get for a shoot. This laptop I'm pretty sure is the one that I'm using right now. The one on the right here. This is 2012 MacBook Pro. It was fairly, I think it was $700 at the time, which was like fuck ton of money. I borrowed $700 from you because I knew that I would get money for the shoot, and I paid you back as soon as the shoot was over. But I knew, I was like, I'm pretty sure my computer had shit the bed when I bought this. Before I bought this laptop, and I was like, fuck, I need a fucking laptop. Luckily, Brie was working a stable job at the time. She was the only one I had to go to. Like, I couldn't get money from my parents or anything. So it was like, I was very lucky. But I never even considered like getting a credit card. I could have just got a fucking credit card, you know what I mean? Which was so stupid.
Well,
but
we had like just moved out. We were just barely adulting.
Yeah, it's true. But like, if you can get a credit card, just get a credit card. I know it sounds stupid. I know a lot of people like are very against loaning it, but if you know you're gonna get the money back like the next day or whatever, or right away, or you know you're confirmed, it is a gamble. But there's gambles that you have to take in this business, and maybe a lot of people would speak negatively towards me about me recommending that, but that's how business works. You got to take risks, and
that's the thing. As long as you know you're gonna be getting the money.
You never really know. That's the thing.
I guess.
But if you've confirmed the shoot with them, you have a shoot date lined up, you can get the money up front. What I often do, especially if I'm buying gear, like way back in the day when I was like desperate for money, you get a 50% up front, or you just say, oh, here's my production costs that I need covered up front. And then you just include whatever expenses you've already put into it or you're about to put into it. And that's it.
That's a good way to make sure that you're going to have the money.
You're not going to be fucked. And even if you get 50% up front, it doesn't cover the complete cost of like this laptop. You still have 50%. You're not completely in a hole. Let's see what else we got. And it's not all just about like kind of buying things preemptively. We'll get a little bit more into like the rentals and like buying things that last a really long time and how you can use that to actually make money. We've covered it a little bit, and I'll show you as we get there, because that comes later in my career. I didn't really understand that in these years when I was just figuring it out. But I do that now. Like a lot of my gear has, like a lot of the gear in this room has paid itself off completely. This light paid itself off completely immediately, and I bought it because I knew it would pay itself off completely. But we'll get into that in a sec. Let's see. So, also in 2015, 2016, I was on, what is this? Oh, this was the first thing I ever like shot. I DP'd this with Shay. And this is another thing, is if you can connect with people who have gear that are at a similar level as you, you can combine gear and do shit like this. And we did our first short. We were using my camera because at the time my camera was better than his. But he had this monitor that also doubled it as an external recorder, which was like super cool at the time. We had the sound guy. The sound guy had all his own gear.
That's another thing to look for.
Yeah, that's another thing, is like when you're connecting with people just on set, but you know, you can join Facebook pages. Facebook pages are huge for people that are like looking to just shoot stuff for fun, that already have experience, or maybe are like a little above you, but still willing to work on your like shitty things, you know?
And then they come and bring the gear with them, so you don't have to worry about that.
As long as you just got to be really nice, and you just got to be like, thank you so much. Just, you know, you just be upfront with them. Don't beat around the bush as if like you're like, this is going to be a great opportunity for them, or don't pretend like, you know, you might pay them at some point or might give them something.
Don't make any promises.
Don't make any promises that just aren't true or you can't keep.
Yeah.
Like if like I didn't approach Maury, but I've done it a million times where I'm just like, hey, like this is the budget that we have. This is what we require. You come to them with what you can offer them and what you expect from them. And then you get a yes or no from them, you know? Like you're like, hey, this is the budget. We only have like, let's say we have like even as low as like we cannot pay you, but we have food and we have food on set. It's going to be fairly chill. You know, it's on these days. If you're free, we would love to have you. We're just like a student film and we're trying to, you know, figure some stuff out, whatever. You can send them your other work. Let them know that you know somebody he knows or something, or she knows, whatever. Like anything you can do to make a connection with them, and let them know that you really, really appreciate them for bringing their stuff out, and they'll bring gear out, and you won't even have to own it. You don't have to leverage anything. All you have to do is just leverage your smile.
And your relationship.
And your relationship. So that's how we got him, as far as I know. I didn't contact him directly. Like I had this guy, he was shooting on, I think he was shooting on my T3i. This is Jesse. Just like behind the scenes video of us. Or he might have had his own camera, I can't remember. But he was in a similar position where he just didn't have, he thought it was cool, thought it'd be fun to do it. And you know, you can do that when you're putting together this production, even though you're just as experienced as he is, it offers people a chance to experience production life, essentially, right?
He just wanted to be on set. So.
Yeah. So that's what we did. And see, Shay and I combine our gear. A lot of this rigging here is my stuff that I bought for cheap. You can see this, like, the weight on the back is just weights.
It's just a weight.
A weight that I bought. It's 2.5 pound weights that I bought from Walmart. And then this is like all hardware from Home Depot and like this L bracket that I just spray painted black. And then I attached it to something. And then there's my A7S, and that's Shay's follow focus.
Duct taped shoulder pad.
Yeah, the shoulder pad wouldn't stay on, so I like taped it to add tension. And then there's Shay's monitor. So we're combining gear to like make something cool, and we ended up making a short film, which was really sick, and it was a lot of fun. One thing that I bought on this shoot that I regret buying, I should have found someone who had it in town or something, but it was this whole like suction cup set. Because at the time I thought it was like, oh, that'd be really cool to own, is a suction cup set. But the thing is that they're too cheap to rent. They're far too cheap to rent. Nobody's gonna rent these. It would rent for like $1 a day. But they were fairly expensive to buy. I think they were like $40 each, which isn't like a lot, but at the time it was a lot. Like on a short that we're making no money, and you're already putting money into gas, and you're putting money into food for the crew and stuff like that, and you're working like freelance, so with no money. So I ended up spending like $100-something on the suction cup set that is never rented once. I think it rented like once, and then a part of it broke, and I didn't charge the guy. So that to me was like something that I should have found and borrowed, or even rented. It would have been better to rent, because the initial investment was way higher for what I would get out of it. But I wasn't thinking of it in future terms. I was just like, that would be a cool piece of gear to own.
That's neat. I want that.
Yeah, and I was like, and I'll shoot car stuff eventually and stuff like that. Never fucking use this again for car stuff. I have one that I use like to hold my phone in my car, and it's really heavy duty suction cup mount for my phone, and that's it. So an example of a way that I just did not leverage my gear at all. That's an example of like shoot, buy gear. Bad move, in my opinion. Yeah. So anyway, those are some shots from like the first narrative thing that I ever shot, other than like stuff in like film camp. It's the first like thing I DP'd with an actual crew. And we just had like a bunch of shitty stuff, and I think the lights we used were my lights. I don't have the actual film here. I couldn't find it. I think it's been taken off the editor. This guy named Cameron. The editor, I think he took it off for whatever reason, but that's fine.
This is BTS.
This is BTS, but I wanted to show the lights. So we lit. These were the low lights that I spent $200 on. Still working for me years later. There they are. Boom. They were acting as headlights for the car. This house was way far away from where our car was that we were shooting, and so I wanted it to look like headlights. We just slapped those down in the field. I think we had rented a generator or something, or no, the guy who owned the property let us use his generator for free. What a guy!
What a
right?
nice guy!
What a nice guy. Used his own gas to let us, but we were super respectful. Shay had like a little bit of relationship with him, so it's like be really nice, and just that's it. Be really nice. So yeah, that like another reason why these lights were one of the best investments I ever made. They're still working for me. I mean, it's only a couple of years down the road, but they're super fucking bright, even though they were technically garbage.
Baby.
That's a little baby me. So yeah, that was great. Oh, and we borrowed a gimbal too for that one. That was the thing, is the editor. That's another thing, is if you have a cool project that people would be interested in coming on to, they will just give stuff for free. Same with the sound guy. Same with Cameron, the guy Cameron wanted to edit. Neither of us wanted to edit, so that worked out perfectly. He happened to shoot wedding films for fun. He's like, I want to do something creative. So he had a gimbal already. So we used a gimbal for a shot and a drone. So we got a drone and a gimbal for $0, and he edited it. Like, anyway, I'm sure
that was an ideal situation.
Yeah, it was great. I'm not going to take all the responsibility for that, or most of it. Shay definitely put that together. That's actually where I met Shay. Shay is the guy who I've started my production company with. for corporate stuff. Anyway, now we move on to Almost Pro. So I've titled this section is 2017. So I'm still working, as far as I know, I'm still doing corporate gigs. I'm slowly getting my own clients. I'm crewing on bigger productions, so I'm like doing camera assistant stuff on way bigger stuff. I DP'd a low budget feature with Shay. Shay, the guy I was mentioning before, we ended up DPing, or I DP'd this thing and he production managed it. So I shot a feature film again on like zero gear. I think we got $7,000 for that and for the whole thing, and we shot it in like a week. It was insane. We won $10,000 TELUS web series pilot grant, and then just doing a bunch of corporate work. So that's sort of where I'm at this point. So we ended up shooting this on. I'm not going to show you the entire thing. I'll just kind of skip through it. But we shot this thing, and we got, as far as I know, the only location we paid for was the farm one. So but we shot this entire thing with our own gear. I think we rented some stands that Shay didn't own at the time. We rented some stands. We had to rent a car. We got $10,000 for the project. It was a grant, so we spent it mostly on rentals. But looking back, we should have just bought like some stands. It would have been slightly more expensive, but it would have been a way better buy. I don't think we were as cohesive as a team at the time, so I would have recommended that. We should have bought some stands with that money. But either way, we ended up renting a bunch of stuff and shooting this. But the majority of it was shot on my own gear. Still shooting this on my A7S. So that we got this house, whatever. Let's see some parts that are actually like lit. It's fucking lit. What's lit? You guys can go watch this later. It's color graded poorly. It was graded by me. Oh, we did use that suction cup rig again. Boom. We used this suction cup rig for this this whole section here, and like I think we used it on a couple more shots on like the van. But this whole thing, again, going back to those lights that I bought for $200, we lit this whole thing with lights, or with those lights. We lit it all with lights. Isn't that amazing? Wow. We lit this whole thing with those $200 lights, which again, great example of buying things that last you your whole career. Lights are one thing that you'll always use. We lit this whole thing. They were basically simulating these this truck's headlights. These cops or these park rangers pull up. This is on my fridge right now. It's a big magnet. Let's see where we can see the headlights. It doesn't really matter. Shay had a 120D that we used to light a bunch of stuff.
Right, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, so you can't see it in the shot because I think I did some VFX to make it a little less subtle. But that basically acted as moonlight for this whole thing. He already owned that. He kind of got it through similar means. You can actually see one of the lights in the shot in this one. My freaking LOL lights.
Oh
it's
no!
Right there. But we're using that. Basically, we're using two of those as like headlights throughout the entire thing because we couldn't keep this truck on because it would just die, and we had to turn it off for audio for obvious reasons. But this whole chase scene here. Right here. Let's watch this part. I love this part. This is my favorite part of the whole film. It's like it's old and it's old and kind of janky, but just watch this part.
It's a lot of firepower for a park ranger.
He's looking at his gun.
You must not be from around here.
I don't know why the audio is so bad right now.
We're good to go.
Sounds good.
The audio sounds really fucking weird right now. I think it's just going.
Bad.
I think it's just going through the recorder and stuff.
Oh.
It's going like through like 3 different things. Oh, he hit the guy. See, like, this is all lit by those 2 shitty garbage lights that I had. But look, it's a fucking great film. We already had it. We didn't have to spend money on those lights.
Hey!
Great sound design. Got it in Toronto. This is not doing the sound design justice. I'm getting to a point here. Let's just keep watching this. See, like that, the lights turning on. That was one of the lights, too. Oh, what I was looking for is not here. Oh, this section right here. I was using the lights that I got from Kicker. I'm pretty sure these were Kicker's lights. They were like these little tiny like LED lights from Aperture. That was pretty sick. Anyway, that was a bit of a tangent that didn't really result in anything.
Yeah, fun fact for that van scene.
Oh yeah, fuck. I didn't mention that at all. What's hilarious about this is we did this a million different times. Where we were reversing the van. We were
trying
like
to get the tires skidding and
We were trying to get the tires to spin, and there was like a bunch of the van like driving off really fast, like right here. And he's like fucking like whipping around. Like this part right here, he like does like a little whip around. It was faster in other scenes, I'm sure, but
yeah.
Bree was even in this shot
So
right here.
I was on this shoot just on this day to do BTS photography.
Yeah.
And this was pretty late at night. It was past my bedtime. And it was cold, so I said I was gonna go take some photos while being in the van, and they had the heat blasting, and I was in the back seat in the comfy chairs, and I fell asleep.
So she was sleeping through all these scenes where you see the van like driving around like crazy. She's in the back
sleeping
like a prisoner of this this cop that stole his van.
Yeah, it's park ranger kidnapped me.
Yeah, she's in there. Except for that shot where I'm in the back, I think. Or no, you were there. I scooched you over. I remember. I was like, Moot, Brie, I gotta be in the middle.
Yeah.
I think I shot that part, which is funny. But Shay DP'd this. I directed it. And we both produced it. Well, there was producers that were we were like executive producers. We did fairly decent. I don't want to take credit away from them. They did a lot of producing. They got everything. Bree still wears this jacket.
I do.
Anyway, I'm trying not to go too much about like down memory lane, but you know, all that gear was shot with gear that entire thing was shot with gear that I owned, and we had a bunch of locations and stuff. And it's not like I had a fuck ton of money to start. Like I moved out of my house literally with $40. I tell the story all the time because it makes me sound like I'm something. I moved out with $40. Worked at a coffee shop. I saved up like $2,000, I think, at the coffee shop. Left, and I literally only had I had a couple outfits. I had like one pair of shoes, and then I had 2 milk crates with camera gear, and that was like my T3i, couple lights, and that was it. And like my most of that, other than the A7S, was shot with like the same gear. Like we even used the same tripod. This tripod that this camera's on right now, we used it in that shoot. This $200 tripod, you know. Well, I mean, ultimately $350. So like, great investment. Didn't have to rent a tripod for that thing. Saved money on shoots between that one and when I bought it. Like so much money. Like if you just buy really good shit, just save up strategically, you know. But anyway, like I said, we're gonna get to more stuff where you can actually make money off it. So anyway, at this point, we did the $10,000 thing, blah blah blah. So the things I bought this time was just mostly like, it was mostly like supporting gear for crew work, because I was sort of gearing up to do more crew work. I was understanding like how valuable it was to be on set, how much money you could make on set, and how much like experience you could gain on set. And I was also kind of like trying to decide my career path. Like, am I going to join the union? Am I going to be kind of like, yeah, just really, am I going to join the union, or am I going to try and like DP stuff? Am I going to just do corporate videos forever? Am I going to like try and be a YouTuber? Here we are. So yeah, so I was doing crew stuff, so I started investing in like, I got a bunch of tools, a bunch of bags, cases, and slates. And that's another thing that's very important to invest in, is like, if you're planning on doing crew stuff, which you 100% should. I think everybody, regardless of whether you want to be a YouTuber, regardless of whether you're doing corporate videos, it's always beneficial to have like a specialty. There's people who do gaffing, which is, you know, Shay does gaffing. That's his primary thing. It's where you're basically like in charge of the technical aspects of all the light. You know, you figure out what voltages all the lights require, and whether you need a generator or not, and what kind of cables to use, and that kind of stuff. That's a gaffer. Communicates directly with the DP. And I'm saying pick something that's not a director DP. Everyone wants to be a director or DP. It's very, very rare. Most of the time, you're going to be doing your own. You're going to be funding your own stuff until you can get to that point. But to learn on set, you need something. You need to enjoy camera department. You need to enjoy grip. You can be a PA. In my experience, I think the best thing to do is probably start doing being a grip, because if you fuck up, nobody's going to see it. And you can also be like right next to all the people that are doing all the cool, important shit, basically. So being grip is great. I came up through camera. If you fuck up in camera, regardless of your experience, everybody knows. So probably be a grip a little bit, but first. So I invested in, you know, just hard cases, bags, tools, and that kind of stuff. And that really helps you with those on-set roles, because, you know, as an AC, you need a bag of your own so that you can carry your tools. You need tools, you need tape and all that kind of stuff. And then the more other supporting stuff you have, like cases or like, I don't know, other little bags, it's just stuff you can bring to camera prep and use on your shoot, especially if you're low budget and running gun. Like I've done that fairly often. And I eventually bought my own LED light panels, so I didn't have to rely on, I was getting to the point where I was kind of outgrowing this corporate video production company I was working for. And I bought these LED light panels so I didn't have to rely on them anymore. And that freed me up to basically just not have to ask. You know, it was a logistical move, which was, I think, very important. But again, those lights, I think lights are almost always a really good investment. Those, like I said, you can get the cheap Amazon lights, but you'll eventually have to replace them. But if it's all you can afford, get the lights because it opens you up so much. But I bought these lights. They're aperture LED panels, and I still use them now. They're right over there in this case, and I use them all the fucking time. So 2017 was around the time where I was like kind of realizing that you could make money in ways that wasn't just like working on set. I was realizing that you could rent gear, and if you had gear that other people wanted, this is where we're getting into the real meat of it, in my opinion. I realized that if you could buy things that other people wanted, you could make a fuck ton of money. And I saw it on a lot of productions. I was like, oh, these guys are renting this thing from this other person. I was like, I have one of those, but I don't have that relationship with them. Or I could have one of those fairly easily. You know, a lot of people don't buy things because either it's too expensive for them to buy, or they don't want to own it because it's like too big and clunky. You know, they'd rather rent it.
You'd have to find somewhere to store it.
Yeah, exactly. So if you can find a way to buy that thing, honestly, like through a loan, and you know it's going to rent, and that's a huge risk is buying things to rent. I think that's typically a bad idea. It still has to be, you have to associate it with a specific production if you're going to plan on renting it. That's a mistake I made with these. This is where I'm learning how to rent things. And so I bought this. I found this just like by fluke for like $5. It's just like it's another suction cup kit. Another one. I didn't learn, obviously, that suction cup kits don't rent often at ever. And if they do, they have to be very high payload because the people who have the money to rent them are also using bigger cameras. So unless you're getting a real big suction cup kit, you're not going to rent it. So I bought this. I don't think it ever rented. I think it rented like once. This is rented a couple times. This is another thing that we got through leveraging on a shoot. This is my NTG4 Plus. The sound guy, I think, was very, very inexperienced on this one show we were doing, and he was a fill-in for a day or something like that, and he didn't have a microphone, and it was at the end of the shoot, and we had a little money left in the budget, and we're like, let's just buy a microphone, like, let him use it. And so we did, and so we bought this. Didn't cost us a dime. And then this was just sort of my gear package at the time, and I'm trying to like encourage people to rent my shit. I'm like, look at all the gear I have, and I had fucking nothing. Like, who would rent based on these photos? What are they doing? But you can see I got like some cases and stuff, and getting cases and things like that is important for organizations. Still using milk crates apparently, and then borrowing stuff because I had a good relationship with Shay at the time, and still
like
I don't know why I said it at the time.
Ago.
I know, right? It's weird, but it was only in 2017.
I know,
not that long ago, but it feels like ages ago. But that's the thing, this was when I started like really accelerating, was when I was I know this is stupid, like right now it's like no one's going to rent based off these photos, but you can tell that like the gears are churning, and I can understand that it's time to start making some money off this gear, and it's time to start getting creative with how you can make money in film. So buying cases to make it more organized, that helps with renting to stuff, but it also helps make you look professional. Obviously, that's another sort of like one of those social investments in my opinion, but it just keeps your gear nice and fresh and organized. It's part of my cases. So yeah, that's what I was doing then. Basically just kind of figuring out that it was important to rent stuff, and I was trying to buy things that I thought people wanted. I was like, ooh, the reason why I got these suction cup kits and I was trying to rent them is because like I on my local Facebook pages, I've seen a fair bit of people posting their gear for rent. I've never seen someone post a suction cup kit. And I didn't think that like, oh, maybe there's no market for that.
Maybe there's a reason
yeah,
why
exactly.
I'd never see that.
Right. But I was more like, that's still, I think, a good thought process. I was like, in my mind, I was like, there's a hole in the market, right?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't understand the market well enough to understand that the hole was there because it wasn't needed. But it's a big part of buying gear is figuring out what other people want to use. This one was not the best investment. I think it's rented a couple times just out of necessity. But I still use it. It's good. There's Shay. Yeah. Anyway, so I'm figuring out how rentals work, and then also in terms of buying gear. This is another great thing you could do, especially when you're joining with like trying to communicate with other filmmakers and people in your industry, even if you're not making films, is bulk buying stuff. Like I've organized a couple group buys. I did the RoboCup group buy because I had a 50% off code with RoboCup. So I went to my local Facebook page. I was like, does anybody want a RoboCup? I have a 50% off code. Let's do a huge order. And so we got a big order and we did that. And I did the same thing with this. This is when I was like just starting out. I didn't know fucking anybody. And it was a big risk for me at the time too. And I think only a few people replied. Chase, I didn't know. And I guess I knew these three. But it was a risk in terms of this guy, Chase Axton, because I didn't know him at the time. And I was like, is this guy actually going to buy them
Is he
from
actually
me?
going to give you the money after you buy them?
Right, exactly. Regardless of what happens, you're showing your face in a useful way on those Facebook pages. You're saying, look, I'm part of the film industry. I got all these cases, and then when I got the cases, I posted the cases to my Facebook. I'm like, got the cases, everybody. You know, it's a very like building up that social framework.
Just getting involved in the community.
Yeah, and I did that just through buying gear, and they paid for me for that. I only paid for the ones that I got. I got a discount on the gear because of the bulk buy. I asked the guy, I was like, hey, would you do to get a discount if we bought like a shit ton of cases? And the guy was like, sure.
He just wanted to get rid of them.
That's a kind of a funny story. It was really weird. Like this guy posted these cases on Facebook, and I was like, why does he have all these cases? Probably something. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't really that much of a question mark at the time. So I went there. And I went to the address, and it was way outside of the city. And it was
super sketchy.
It was in an airplane hangar. And the guy lived in an airplane hangar, and he had a Hummer H1, a Hummer H2, a bunch of pinball machines, and like a big
just like
TV
a giant
and a couch.
bachelor pad.
Yeah, it was like this giant bachelor pad in an airplane hangar. And the dude was just like, yeah, all the cases are in there. And he literally had this Hummer, the Hummer H1, just like filled to the brim, like in every door, even in the driver's seat, like just like. And H1s have a lot of fucking space in them. It was filled with Pelican cases in the cab, and then also in the box of the truck itself. So I spent like a good 45 minutes crawling around the inside of this Hummer and like tossing them around and trying to find the cases that were like the least damaged.
And just like the best looking ones.
Yeah, exactly. Because I wanted to like it to look good on my film contacts, right? I was like, I don't want to buy these shitty cases, so I was like trying to find the best ones.
So a lot of them were really scuffed up.
Yeah, I later found out that he used them for construction and stuff, and then they were decommissioned for some reason. Anyway, weird kind of shit. It's kind of some weird shit. Man, this podcast has been going for a while.
Yeah.
Should
we take a break at any point?
We could if you want to. Do you want to take a break?
Kinda would like to.
I can keep going if you.
Okay.
Or do you want to wait? Let's take a break. We'll take a quick break, and it's not gonna feel it's gonna feel just like no time at all to you because we're just gonna cut right back. All right, we're back. I think we're gonna try and hurry this up. It's getting a little late, and the podcast is getting a little long. And if you have any questions, just ask me. Send me a DM on Instagram. Leave me a comment down below. I'd love to talk more about gear and sort of how you can use that to expand your career and make some more money. But we're getting into the meat of it right now in terms of actually making money off that gear. Here we go. So now we move on to I'm forgetting where the assistant phase. So I've called it. I didn't come up with these names are not very creative. This is the assistant phase. Let's do the sound again. The assistant phase. Wow. Almost pro. This is 2018. So this is pretty close to now. And this is when I feel like I really started understanding set life and understanding how you can actually start making money off of the gear and start getting gear for free, essentially, if you leverage it correctly. So this was the first year this is when I was really building my film relationships. It was my first full production crew position. So a lot of them, it was I do a couple days on a short film. I do a couple days on a feature, as a fill-in. I would do a couple days on some things. I was getting around, but I wasn't anyone's main guy at that point. I was usually the second guy that was called, or the third guy, or whatever, or the fourth guy. I don't know, but it's good to at least be on that list.
Yeah, exactly. You were still on the list.
Exactly. So at this point, this was the first one where I was the first guy on the list. Maybe I wasn't the first guy on the list. Either way, I got the job. So I was on this production called Abracadabras. It's fun. We'll put it up on the screen here. I don't really need to get too into the specifics of it. But yeah, this was like the first sort of big crew that I was on. It's not, in the scale of things, it's not really that big, but it was a fleshed out. We had departments and everything, These are all BTS photos I took. There's Shay. Shay was gaffing on it. And there's Carly staying at these motels.
It was your first full series.
It was the first thing that I was on for the entire run of show,
Mhm.
which was very exciting. And then after that, I ended up doing another one with these guys immediately after. Then that I ended up being on my first feature film, which was really insane. I was on, and then I went to a McDonald's commercial as the first assistant camera. And then I started getting my first like pure camera operator gigs. I did some for HGTV, History Channel. We did one big doc for OpenAI, which was a lot of fun. Went to Vancouver and all this stuff. So I was starting to understand sort of where I wanted to be in the film industry and where I was valuable and where I could bring value to other people and how I could essentially leverage that to make money. So, and then So this year, this is the year that we also ended up buying the studio because again, like I said, I was understanding sort of where the holes needed to be filled. I thought a studio was a really good idea. Turns out it was kind of a shitty idea, but it was a really good idea in terms of getting social cred because I think that built our social cred a lot, and we were able to get the studio for insanely cheap. Like I don't know about the things about saying exactly how much I'm renting it for. Basically nothing, and which also allowed us to rent it for basically nothing. So we had this small studio. It was already painted black, insane, that we were able to offer to our film connections for basically nothing. We'd just be like, yeah, just like some of them we'd just like, yeah, you can just shoot in there for the day. You don't have to pay, depending on the occasion or whatever. If they have no budget, you can cut them slack and just be like, yeah, you just shoot in there, just leave it clean or
It's
whatever.
yours. So.
Exactly, and we could make a little bit of money just to cover the rent. BB Kitty, you're going to interrupt this podcast too? I guess we have been occupied for like almost 2 hours. I ended up buying Shogun Inferno, which is another one of the best investments I've ever made. I'm using it right now. It's a monitor / recorder, and I bought the Shogun Inferno because I knew that I was going to be doing a ton of assistant work that year. And I was like, whether I can rent this to the production or not, it's going to make me more valuable to have this thing, and this production will ultimately, I will recoup the cost just on days worked. I was able to rent it to the production, so it paid itself off that summer. So I bought this $1,200, I think it was actually like $2,500, like all in with the whole kit, maybe. And it paid itself off. I was able to pay itself off because I knew that I was going to get a bunch of camera assistant work. I was talking with somebody. I was like, damn, I'm going to be on the run of show. Yes, I have a monitor. I asked them, I was like, do you guys have a monitor for this thing? And they were like, no. And I wasn't even using the monitor on the first one. And I was like, do you guys want a monitor? I've been thinking about getting a monitor. I'll just get it, And they're like, sure, And so I rented it to them. I was like, I'll rent it to you for cheaper than anywhere you can rent it, basically. And they went for it. And that's another thing. When you own your own gear, you can leverage it in a way that you can just rent it cheaper than rental houses. And plus, they don't have to go through insurance and stuff. So people are way more interested in renting from you. So I knew I was going to get assistant work. So I bought the Shogun Inferno and I rented it, paid it off. Let's see. Oh, I want to show the sick-ass slate shot, sick-ass shot that Shay took of me. Probably the coolest photo that anyone's ever taken of me.
You do look really badass.
It's pretty fucking badass of me on this on this shoot, slating. Yeah, first big project that I've ever been on. It was a lot of fun. But I've slated and stuff in the past. But again, like I said, it was the first like run of show. This is Abracadabras. You can look it up. It's a Telus-funded web series. Ton of fun. Everyone on that crew was super great. Then we did Summer's Monster immediately after that, which was also a lot of fun. And you can see
another
Telus funded one, and another thing. See, there's my monitor right there. And that's the director Morgan, and he's using it. And they had their own wireless system and everything, but it was super useful. I ended up buying some accessories for it. I bought this really shitty HDMI cable, but it was useful. Like, it was shitty, but it was useful.
Oh,
it got us
the fake money.
This is a bunch of fake money that someone Morgan brought to set. That was a lot of fun. But yeah. Anyway, so like, I bought things anticipating that it would be either useful to the production surrounding the things that I was responsible for, essentially, to ease, if you can ease their job through your job in any way, and you can do that through buying things, then do it. Like I bought this chest pouch and everything. So I ended up investing into a lot of camera assistant stuff that year because I knew I was going to be doing camera assistant stuff. Let's see what else we got here. And then, I started doing some pure camera stuff. This was fun. This one is not really about gear investments. This is just a thing I did for History Channel, which was really sick. A camera operator on it. But anyway, at this point, I'm kind of getting more into full crew or like sort of just pure camera operator gigs where I'm not like doing everything. I'm not producing it. I'm not hiring a bunch of people. They're just like, we need a camera operator. Pretty dope. And then this guy. So basically this is everything this is like a little album of just things I did that summer. This was the first not the first big camera I rigged out, but I was on this feature film for the entire summer. So this was probably the biggest project I've ever done at the time where I was on for Run a Show. I was first assistant camera, which means I was completely managing all the gear in camera department. And I was also pulling focus on the day. And so like even for this, I was trying to find stuff that I could rent to the production or make it easier. Like you can see my hardware and stuff there. And like, when you're crewing stuff, it's expected of you to have things like that. Like you need bags, you need hardware. Like this rig wouldn't have come together unless I had this hardware, which is but it's like this unspoken thing on productions and you don't really know until you get there. This bag I bought, this was a great purchase. I bought this knowing it would be useful on the show, knowing that I was planning on getting a bigger camera that it would fit into later on. So I ended up buying this. And that worked as great as a Diddy bag. This is just some I guess this is just like going down memory lane right now. This is East Texas Oil. This was a lot of fun. See, we've got like a whole western town. This is just right next to our town. There's Charles, the DP, had 2 cameras. This is the one that I built. And this is the other one. Look, you can see how shitty A-cam is compared to mine. I don't remember who rigged up A-cam, but B-cam, look at the cables. They're all so nicely, like they're cinched up and they're labeled, and A-cam is just like fucking everywhere. Just like a nest. Not to brag. This was just a funny photo in the A-cam.
Oh, wow.
I know, he looks like a sailor or something. He's a seaman. But anyway, yeah, so that was some good fun. This was the McDonald's commercial I was on, where again, I'm using that same monitor. You can see that it's got my website on it. I'm using the same monitor. I was able to rent that to production. I think I got like $80 a day for it on that one. So I made, I made huge money off of my day rate. I was already making $550 a day, and then I rented that for $80 a day. If I had like other shit to rent for them, I could. Their monitor happened to know. This is another thing is they should have had monitors for me, right? Like this is a pretty big production. This is McDonald's. They normally wouldn't, we're shooting on Alexa Mini. I think they had 3 Alexas on that show. They were all 2 Alexa Minis and Alexa Classic at C camera. But their monitor shit the bed, like first thing. Their monitor just shit the bed completely. And luckily I had this in my car because I was like, I'm gonna bring this just in case. I used it, talked to production. I was able to get $80 a day for it. Boom. That's another good chunk of change.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Oh, look, your tattoo.
Oh, that's my tattoo. And then this was like a little doc that we were shooting. We got camera operator gigs, and because we already own this gear, I'll get more into like sort of leveraging your camera gear in that way in a second. I mean, I guess I could talk it right now. I ended up buying this FS5. Sorry, I'm really gassy in my tummy. No horse for that. I ended up buying this FS5. I didn't really have the money for it at the time, but I knew that I had a couple of really big gigs coming up, and I had them scheduled. I already had the Shogun Inferno. I bought the Shogun Inferno knowing that it was a recorder, knowing that it would upgrade my current camera, and knowing I could use it on future cameras. But I rented this to the production too. I knew that I had these big shoots coming up. They asked me what kind of camera I use, and I was like, I was thinking about getting an FS5. I was like, I have an FS5. Or I just shoot on FS5, whatever, Sony. They said they shot on FS7s, and I was like, I can fulfill that need. Shay here's got an FS7. That's this boy. And we crewed this thing. We used all our own gear, and it was we made good money on that. That was sick. That was the Dota 2 World Championships in Vancouver, and this is like just kind of me shooting some B-roll and stuff. But yeah, that's, my gear. I'm making my day rate off of it. I got some rental and it's paying for itself. I'm sure I haven't calculated the specific cost for my FS5. I'm sure it's paid itself off. But that's, again, something that if you know that you have, like, let's say, I don't know. Let's say, I've come across a gig like this. Let's say you somehow land a sick doc gig. Like, it could have been this one. Maybe I didn't own the FS5. Let's say I land this gig. I could just fucking buy an FS5 and pay off even like a third of it. Even a third of it, if I know I've got gear work coming up, I could buy the FS5, pay off a third of it, rent it to the production, and that is like still a fantastic investment because it's going to pay itself off down the road. Still using my FS5 as my main camera, fantastic camera. Works in other people's workflow clearly because they had FS7s. They wanted other FS7 shooters. Shay had an FS7. I knew, and Shay, I can't remember who bought which camera first. But like we were both talking about what cameras we wanted. We knew the cameras that people use in our local industry. And that's why we ended up buying Sony FS series cinema cameras because we knew that people in our vicinity use them. And it benefited us tremendously and it still does. And I'm pretty sure Shay's thinking about upgrading his camera now. He's gotten like all that he can get out of that camera. He's just gotten hired so much based on that camera, which is insane. But it's honestly like 50% your skill. And that skill includes your ability to network and stuff. And then the other 50% is your gear. Like your gear is so fucking important. Just more shots of the camera. And I was able to rig on, do some other cool shit. This was fun. I got to rig this whole thing out. I had a little bit of gimbal experience and this was fun. I just rigged this out. I didn't do this. I'm not a grip or anything. But that was a really good summer. This was another one with Charles Hamilton, DP right there. He's a great guy. But same thing. I somehow wound up on his feature film. He liked me, hired me on some other stuff, including this. But this is not about. I keep talking about networking stuff, but it's about gear. But it kind of
goes hand in hand.
It kind of goes hand in hand. Let's see what else we got. So anyway, so that year, that was 2018. I bought the Shogun Inferno. I bought a bunch of camera assistant stuff. So like tools and pens and stuff like that. Things like that, especially expendables. If you need it on the production, you can expense it to the production. You just need to talk to people you're working for. If you want to be a camera assistant and you need, especially if it's a big show. If it's a little show, often they won't have the budget for it. But like, let's say you need tape. Like if you need tape on every set. You say, hey, I have expendables. Like can we get some money for the expendables? Yeah. You just talk to whoever's directly above you about that, and they'll probably point you towards this production manager. But like all the tape that I own this huge fucking stringer of tape, and I didn't pay anything for it. It's all been paid by productions. Like productions paid for all the tape. They've paid for basically all my expendables. Let's see, Dana Dolly. Oh, see this. Oh, am I skipping ahead? No, I'm not. Okay. This is where we get into the real meat of it, in my opinion. Because the FS5, in my opinion, I bought way too early. It took me way too long to start making money off of it because I was doing crew positions. I should have not bought the camera. I should have bought like lighting and grip stuff. Even though I wasn't in grip department, I should have bought more lighting and grip stuff. Probably should have bought like a follow focus at the time. That would maybe be way more marketable, but I didn't really understand that at the time of like who I'm marketing to, because even though it's not like I'm like an influencer or anything. When you're working in the film industry, you still have that sort of brand. You're like, I am the camera assistant, so you got to buy things that facilitate that area of expertise. But I did buy some really good stuff. I bought the Dana Dolly. Let's see if I can pull this up. This is probably one of the best investments I've ever made. What is this? Okay, right here. This is probably one of the best investments I've ever made. Dana Dolly. Oh, there's the FS5 all rigged out. I rented some stuff. Where is it? This is just a shoot that I ended up doing. This was, by the way, with that client where I rented the first stuff from. That Bree was on and everything. This is the same client like years later, and they're still doing stuff. Their productions have gotten bigger and better, and they had way more money. But I knew that this shoot was coming up because they're a great client. We were already planning it and stuff, and I kind of knew what I wanted out of it, and I knew I wanted to try some new things. So I bought this preemptively, knowing that I was going to rent it to them. Essentially, I didn't pay it off in that production, but I also knew just from gaining experience in the industry, I worked on that feature film and saw these, like they had Dana Dollies on there. I'd never seen a Dana Dolly before, and that was the East Texas Oil. It was the same year, actually. It was the beginning of the year. Man, I was like, but I mean, I was doing other shit. I don't know. I'm making myself sound like super inexperienced at the time, but maybe I was more inexperienced than I realized. But I had never seen a Dana Dolly before East Texas Oil. And it's basically like a giant slider. It's not really a slider because your camera goes on this plate and the plate slides on like rails. So it is technically a dolly. But think of it like a giant slider. But the thing is that they're industry standard. It comes with adapters for like other heads, so you can have huge fucking cameras on it. And their main use is for big productions that need a small footprint. So even though it looks really chunky and looks like it's like, a bitch to carry around, which it is, for a big production, this thing is like a way, way smaller alternative to a big dolly.
Well, if you go back to that last photo set that you had there.
Yeah, like this
That
one.
thing.
Like look at that. Look at that fucking thing. Imagine trying to bring that into some indie place. Like we're in the middle of a field, but like you got a small crew that can't manage that. Maybe you don't have the budget for this. You might have the budget to rent this, but you don't have the budget to run it, With this, you can do not the same thing. Like you wouldn't have this whole thing on the top, but you could have the dolly aspect of it for nothing. Like from a production perspective, you rent this, it's like $200 a day or something like that. And they're saving a fuck ton of money. And if you can rent it cheaper because you already own it, like it's a huge advantage, I guess. Right. And if you know the right people to market that to, then you can rent it. And also one thing that's great about owning this, it's very adjacent to grip gear, is it's very difficult to damage. And it's also like, it's just made of metal. It's dumb. So you don't have to upgrade it necessarily. Like there's not a lot of maintenance involved in it. It's not easy to damage, essentially, is what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
And this thing has paid itself off so many times. This is probably the piece of gear that makes the most money in terms of things that I like. This has been used by other people more often than it's used by me.
Mm-hmm.
Because I just knew that there was only like one or two other kits in Calgary, which is the city I live in, and that there's a hole in the market to be filled. And I remember talking to people on the set of East Texas Oil, and they're like, "Oh, these are great. I wish we had these and these." And I was talking to like other DPs that I worked with, and they were like, "Man, if I had a Dana Dolly on my set, I asked people, I was like, if I bought a Dana Dolly, would you rent it? Just straight up asked them, if I bought this thing, would you rent it?" And they were like, "Oh man, I would have totally rented that." I got like that from like 3 different people, and I was like, fucking done.
Looks like I'm
buying
getting
it.
one.
Yeah. And I think I bought it at a bad time because I was shooting a lot of my own stuff, and I didn't really I can't remember what happened. I just wasn't able to rent it for a little bit. But the next year, once production picked up, like I rented it so many times. That thing has paid itself off so many times. So great investment. Like that's a great example of me learning and understanding my local industry and understanding like what people want in the local industry.
Mm-hmm.
And this isn't necessarily what I want to make money off of. But there are people that just do that just buy gear strategically, or they'll go onto a set, and once you have high enough clout and relationships, you're the first person that they call and the first person that gets recommended, and they're like, "Oh, I know this guy. He's got all this gear." Shay's definitely sort of in that world because he's got a bunch of grip gear. A lot of people call him for indie stuff. Like he's got a bunch of lights, got a shit ton of C-stands. Again, like grip gear is a great thing to invest in if you want to rent it out to productions and stuff.
And it gets you on gigs.
And it gets you on gigs, and people see a lot of value in you if you have that. Like this Dana Dolly was, I made enough money off of this project and like projects around it where I could pay for it, and I basically made $0 off of at least this, because I ended up putting a bunch of money into like rentals and stuff. Like I rented these lenses and shit. And like crew. I wanted to hire crew and make the project good. But I definitely leveraged that really well, I think, and that's one of the best investments I've ever made.
It's really crazy looking at that
As like old.
set. Well, no, just looking at that set compared to the very first one that we did with
Oh
them.
yeah, the very first one compared to that, it's crazy. It's just like me, you, and a tripod, and like
Zach.
and then that one had like, I don't know, I think we had
So
like
much.
15 people or something, and we had like a makeup artist and Kalela, she's great. And then we had costume design. We had a bunch of grips. We had a bunch of rental gear. Shay had a bunch of gear. Another thing is like Shay has a bunch of gear. He let me just like, I rented it from him. That's the thing is like I had budget for that. I had rental budget, and I was like, and because me and Shay are friends, he rented it to me for super cheap. So he's making money. He's paying off his gear, and I'm getting a relatively cheap rental because I have this relationship with him.
Mm-hmm.
Kitty
Ooh.
baby, you are lucky that my tea isn't full because you would have just knocked it over. All right, so we're on to anyway. We're almost at the end of this train. So this is basically, I titled this one "We Out Here" because this is the 2019-2020. It's my current one. Is that the flashback or the title? Oh, that's the flashback. Flashback to right now.
Right now.
Yay! I appreciate it, Brie. Thank you. Let's add some claps in there and some air horns. So 2019, 2020, finally making money on rentals, no longer struggling to find work. I also bought some lights in that last year and rented those too. I should have mentioned that, but finally making money on rentals. I'm like no longer like having to like beg for work. Like a lot of it's just kind of coming my way and coming a little bit more naturally because I'm just getting better at it.
This is 2019.
Yeah. Crewing on bigger projects like commercials and TV shows and stuff. Met a lot of really cool people. Operating and DPing on more stuff. I was able to operate on, well, this one I AC'd on. This was a lot of fun. These are just some BTS photos of this one. We took a bunch of snowmobiles and we snowmobiled way out into the backcountry in Golden. This was for this TV show where I guess, like I talked to them and they easily could have done all this stuff on like green screens. It's for like a kids TV show. And I asked them, I was like, this whole thing is for kids TV show. Why do we need to like crew out, like drive like 15 people out on snowmobiles and a fuck ton of gear into the middle of nowhere and spend literally like tens and tens of thousands of dollars on the shoot? And it was just a casual question. He's just like, I don't know. They just wanted to shoot it for real. I was like, okay. So it was a really sick experience anyway. We went out there with all these snowmobiles. I was able to use my own gear and rent it to them. Again, this monitor continuously paying itself off because I knew assistant camera stuff. I was like, I'm going to stick to camera department. I can just continue buying gear for that, rent it to them. I rigged out one of their cameras here.
Ooh.
Oh yeah. And then I can't remember if this one was mine at the time. No, I think I bought mine more recently. I think I rented that one from somebody for really, really cheap. But here we are, way out in the middle of fucking nowhere, snowmobiled out. It's really sick, super fun experience. But again, leveraging my gear. By that time, you kind of have the connections and stuff, and you can build it. It's less about the gear. It's definitely less about the gear in that case. Oh, what is this? Oh, I wanted to look at this. I worked on this Lululemon shoot. First time operating RE Alexa Mini, which was sick. So I was actually camera operating on Alexa Mini, which is fucking rad.
Look at that boy.
Look at that booty.
Yeah, that's an AC booty.
That is an AC booty. Posing as a camera operator booty, but definitely an AC booty. So that's
an inside joke.
That's a bit of an inside joke. ACs have big booties. I've noticed all the ACs I work with, including me, have big booties. And Travel Alberta. And so like for all of these in some way, big or small, I was able to leverage my gear and make a little bit of money off this. And this one is great because I had, the guy who's DPing it was like a good friend of mine. I mean, at the time, I don't think he was a good friend of mine. I knew a little bit about him and we hadn't really, I can't remember we worked on stuff before that together. I think we did. Small stuff. Grant.
Oh.
Grant's going to be on the podcast later. He owns an Alexa Mini LF. He's the king of leveraging things for gear and buying gear. He owns an Alexa Mini LF. So we're going to talk all about that on the next podcast, or not next podcast after next podcast. It's going to be super cool.
But the one where he's in.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. This is just the view from my hotel room. I just got on this sick fucking shoot at Lake Louise. Got this freaking view of the lake from a hotel.
Beautiful.
So beautiful. But on that shoot, still making money. I ended up buying I was renting my light to him. I already had a 120D Mark II. I think I bought that the year before, but I was like, yo, I know you need lights. You want to rent that shit? And they were just like, yeah. You just ask them. You give them your list, and you're like, is there anything you want to rent from me? And lights are something, especially if it's current and it's punchy, it's always something that'll rent. And I think that light paid itself off on that shoot. And then we ended up doing more with that. We did another stint of Travel Alberta, and I bought a 300D Mark II like very recently. I asked him, I was like, hey, thinking about buying a 300D Mark II, would you rent it? He was like, yeah. And it paid itself off in that stint too. Freaking got a free 300D Mark 300D2, 300D Mark II, getting tired. I got a free 300D Mark II, didn't have to do any work. I just said, hey, do you want to rent this? And he was like, yes. And I don't think it paid itself off completely on that shoot, but he's rented it since, and other people have rented it since, and it's free,
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's fucking dope. This is
Again.
yeah, this is again the same client that I started with, and like every year we do it gets bigger and bigger. There was a few more years, like there's
It's
a few
like an
things.
annually reoccurring client.
I've skipped some videos that we've shot with them. We shot like a few more, I think 3 or 4 more that I haven't shown. But look, Shay, there's Shay again. Mark, homie. There's me and Shay, and that's me and Shay. And so this is the shoot that we're on again. Like, remember Abracadabras, that one that it was like the first thing I AC'd, first thing I was on the run of show. That we rented this jib from them for $50. It was kind of a shitty jib, like overall, but we got it for $50. Just having those relationships, and then we didn't have to buy it. We didn't have to rent it from somebody else for more expensive. And you can let other people borrow your stuff in exchange for favor bucks too.
Mhm.
You let other people
Favor
borrow and
bucks.
rent your stuff. Favor bucks are fucking huge. If you have gear, you can gain so many favor bucks as long as you're not letting yourself get pushed around. You can build so many favor bucks. If you're comfortable letting someone borrow a light, they'll happily buy you a beer or let you use some of their shit.
Mhm.
You can offer that to them. Say, they're like, hey, can I use your light? And I'm like, sure. That's totally cool with me. I don't need it on that day or anything. And then later on, or even right then, you could say, I could really use this. If it's of equivalent value or something like that, or you have a good relationship, why wouldn't they say yes? They almost always say yes. So you can borrow gear if you have gear, you can leverage that to borrow more gear, on shoots later on. So like having gear bolsters you socially too. Yeah. So you get the gear basically by leveraging it with clients, especially when you're working freelance. And then when you're working on set, you can leverage it with the production completely. Just so many good ways to buy gear without actually having to spend money on it, where you can like either end up with zero sum or you profit off of it. And typically it's zero sum, but there's a lot of, like, as you do it, you'll figure out what you can profit off of, and you'll see what other people are profiting off of too. Like, pay attention to what other people are renting. Like when I bought the 120D2, people were, what was it about the 120D2 that made it rent? I can't remember. There was some hype about it, and people had already had some experience with aperture lights, and I was like, I know when this 120D2 Mark II comes out, people are going to want to rent it. Same with the 300D2, and plenty of people have rented the 300D2, and I basically got it for free from a different production, Pretty sick. So yeah, here, this is our shoot, and I think the only thing we're renting here, we rented this frame, and we rented this dolly track, and we rented this dolly. That C-stand, all the C-stands are Shay's, all the lights, except for one light we rented, everything else belongs to us. The light that we rented, which is it was Alex Mitchell's Joker Bug 1600 Mark II. Fuck, I'm probably butchering that. They don't have like Mark IIs and stuff. It's too legit for that shit. It wasn't a Joker Bug, was it? Joker 1600. It was a Joker 1600. It's the most recent version of the Joker 1600. It's really punchy, and it's like really good light. And so we had that behind there. We rented this frame, but everything else was ours. Like we had all our aperture lights out. I don't know if you can really see them. Let's see. We got one there. We had a couple behind the frames. And then we had one that was kind of just bouncing around later on as like just a fill. Using my camera, my FS5 II. Using my Shogun, was able to make money off of that on that production. Yeah, just owning the gear will pay for the gear. I feel like that's really what I'm trying to hit home here, is that like when you own the gear, it pays for itself. And it's not in acquiring the gear, some people generally understand that, but acquiring the gear is not so difficult if you know where to look and you know how to talk to people about it in the right way, Like, you don't have to just shoot, buy. You wait for the shoot to come, figure out what you're going to buy for that shoot, let the client give you the money, and then you do it, or you sort of sample a little bit from your local industry, people and you use that knowledge to make informed buying decisions on what's going to make you more money. So this sounds all super complicated. I'm sure it does. And I would never have been able to wrap my head around it until I actually tried it and did it. But, and there's definitely risk involved, but it can be very, very fruitful I'm not going to say my shit's the fucking best. It's not like I shoot the bombest shit and I'm the only one who can make good shit. But like, I can do a proper short film without renting a single thing, And I bought the stands for this shit. Like this Dana Dolly, again, here, paying for itself. I was able to pocket a lot of the money because I didn't have to rent a bunch of stuff, Or you can do basically no budget things for a decent amount of money. Or you can do no budget things at really high quality because you have the gear already from other paying gigs. And those ultimately bring up your quality and get you more gigs. And here's Grant. Here's Grant with his Alexa Mini LF. What a cute boy. There's just me and him snuggling there's his Alexa Mini LF. And what's funny is he did the same thing with this Ronin. There was a production that he knew he needed a gimbal for the entire run of the production. He was able to get a $20,000 gimbal because he knew that the rental cost of it, even though he was still, and it's not like he's fucking anyone over or scamming anybody. He looked into it as I looked into it. It was funny. Me and Shay wanted to buy this gimbal, and he had the idea first, I guess, because we were working on the same thing. We were like, let's buy this gimbal and rent it to the production. He was renting it to the production cheaper than they would have rented it from like a rental house. But he was able to still pay it off. I don't know if he paid it off completely, but he got a $20,000 gimbal for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And all because, and I'm not all because, he's a very, very talented cinematographer, but a big part of it was the fact that he owns an Alexa Mini LF. More leverage, more reason for people to hire him. He already owns it, and he'll talk a little bit more about that. As far as I know, he doesn't own it outright. I don't want to say any specifics. I know some specifics, but I'll let him say it. He seems very open to talking about it. That's why I'm comfortable talking about it as well. There's me in the
so
thing.
Cute.
This is also Grant's camera cart. Same thing. He levered all that shit. We'll talk about that more. That's his monitor. That's my cute face. This is the boys.
The boys.
I love this
They
photo.
look
They're all just
so
like, we had
pooped.
oh god, that was like, I can't remember why that day was so shitty, but we were all feeling like shit. And there was no elevator in this place, and we had to bring all this gear up the stairs. And I just remember we were talking about it, and they looked so miserable.
I feel like I can see why you guys
Why? Just because of all the gear?
No.
Vodka, gin, whiskey. Yeah, we probably got really drunk the night before or something. But like, I mean, you can see a lot of this shit's rented, but a lot of the shit's Shay's too. Look at and he rented this to the production. These are Shay's. This is Shay's cart. This is all Shay's tools. Those are his clamps. You can rent the tapes. You can rent that stringer of clamps for like, I don't know, like $5 a day. Eventually it'll pay itself off. You know what I mean? Maybe not even $5 a day. I don't know. You get it. And you can also like create a full rental package, and then you just discount them like 25%. And they're like, wow, that's amazing. And then you just make a fuck ton of money off of things that you would same amount of effort for you.
Exactly. Things that you would already bring.
Things that the production would be renting from someone else, essentially, is you're just like, why are you letting all these other productions give the money out, give it out to other people? You need to be that person. So those are also his tubes. What are they called? They're in gun cases. It's kind of funny.
Oh,
looks like he's carrying guns around and shit. They're quasar tubes. Those were a fantastic buy. There was not a lot of them in Calgary at the time. Shay was like, those are cool lights that people are going to want to use.
Mm-hmm.
So he bought them.
He's rented them out plenty of times.
Yeah, and they were like, in terms of the amount of money he's made off them, they're very cheap. And then all these photos are unedited, unfortunately. I do have edited versions of them, but I couldn't find them. But this is just like hitting up the gondola. This isn't really that interesting for that shoot. A lot of fun. So yeah, that was a great one. I invested a bunch of AC shit. I invested in this camera right here because I needed it. You know, it's funny about this camera. How much was this camera? I think this is an A6400. I can't remember how A6400 is used. But I wanted a camera, like my only 4K camera, I had my FS5 and then my A7S Mark I that I needed to use with my Shogun to be 4K. It had only output it's 4K. It doesn't shoot 4K internally. But I was like, I need a camera that shoots 4K internally, also does S-Log3 because my old one didn't. And it can record indefinitely or whatever. Picked up this A6400 for the shoot. I think I got paid like, I don't know, let's say $950 or something for the shoot, something like that. Most of that money I think went towards this A6400 and I bought it used. But I got a free fucking A6400 for it. And now I have this A6400. I just bought it first. The guy was like, hey, we need to do a 3-camera shoot. And I was like, cool. I can do that.
This is how much it's going to cost.
Yeah, exactly. This is how much it's going to cost. And then I knew it was like for a charity thing. So that was like the bare minimum. I was like, this is how much it's going to do it. And based on things I've done with them before, they were happy. It was within their budget. Free camera.
Yeah, as long as it's within their budget, then
they're gonna go for it.
They're gonna go for it.
Be prepared for a no too. They might have said no, but then I'd be like, that's okay. I can make myself busy in other ways on that day that will eventually lead to more money. You know what I mean? Don't be sad when people say no.
But that's the thing, though, is, what was I saying?
I don't know.
Totally lost.
It's
my
getting
train of
really late.
thought.
We need to wrap this freaking bitch up. I really, honestly, as much as I know most of you are not going to listen all the way through, you fucking better. If you want to make it in this industry, I know this sounds really like maybe a little elitist, very self-congratulatory, like I am the key to the mint. I don't know everything. I'm still learning a lot. There's DPs who, like Grant, who do this way better than I do, who are way more successful than I am. I am like horrible at my finances, way more experienced. I totally acknowledge that. But I've tried this stuff. I know that it works. I'm doing it right now. It's a big part of the reason why I've been working in freelance film full time for the past 5 years. You know? So I hope that you've listened to this. I hope someone's listening right now, honestly. Yeah.
Just because it's good info.
Oh yeah, and it's all it all is in context to what you're shooting. I'm not saying you should go out and buy a Dana Dolly. I'm not saying you should even go out and buy a C-stand. You might not have those kind of connections right now, but when you meet the people that need it, you'll know. You know what I mean? You just need to sort of test the waters. You need to go out there and shoot with other people. You need to go be a PA or grip on someone else's set for free, even. And just start testing the waters, dipping your toe in your local industry and figuring out who the big players are. That is the main thing. And sort of figuring out the flow of your local industry, what kind of work you want to do. Shay's got a lot of opinions on this, obviously. I want to talk to him more about it on the podcast. But one thing that Shay always says is that it's important to, when you're buying things, it's important if it's something that you're going to use too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, everyone's going to use a C-stand. I don't think that's the only criteria though. I think you can own things that other people aren't, other people are going to use that you're not. Like I own that Dana Dolly and I use it on a lot of big shoots that I do. Not everyone. But other people use it more than I do. And I don't regret buying it. It's just a matter of knowing your local industry. And that in a way was a little bit of a fluke, but it was also, it was more like a lucky educated guess. You know what I mean? Like I knew that it was valued. I could see that it would be useful on a bunch of productions that I was going to use it on coming up. And I had talked to DPs that said they definitely would rent it. And I understood the value of it. Like I understood the function it had on set and what it alleviated and how it was a cheaper version of something really good that essentially brought the same product that people actually wanted. It's all about who you know. It's really like you need to think about it in terms of what kind of work you do and what kind of work that the people you know do. So that's the main thing. But also, yeah, same thing with A6400. Bought that. That's more of like a personal purchase, not something I'm probably making money off of. I probably never will make money off of that. Unless you do 2-camera shoots, you can do like charge a little bit more if they're doing 2-camera shoots. It's up to you how you want to charge it. But yeah, that's basically, those are the main bullet points of great gear purchases that I've done over the years.
Mhm.
That's it. That's up until this point. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of stuff that I'm missing. I've obviously done a lot more work than that. Like, that's not my
Right.
portfolio or anything. But it should give you a good idea of sort of like the steps that I took and the decisions I made at what times and sort of what I did wrong, in my opinion. Like, I did a lot of things wrong.
And hindsight is 2020, so it's like,
It is 2020 right now.
ha ha ha.
I know
That's not what I
it's
meant.
It's bad bit. Is there laughing thing? I don't know laughing. I just do.
But like, you can see every step of the way, every year. There's like new things that you learned, and
Right, exactly.
so it's like,
The gears are turning.
yeah, it's like take what you've just said, like all this info, just take that and build off of it. Use that as your ceiling.
Right. I feel like this, if I had listened to this podcast earlier, it would open the door for me in terms of like thinking about gear as more of an investment in, I don't know, it just more, it's less an investment in the kind of work that you can do personally and the kind of like product that you can produce, and more an investment in how you fit into your local ecosystem and how you can actually provide value, make money off of your local ecosystem, how you can tap in to people around you to make money in a way that's just really good. You know, you got to find a lot of creative ways to make money in this industry. And that's one of them. Gear is like a huge way to make money, and there's also plenty of ways, as I've kind of gone over, to get gear for free. And it's mostly just thinking about it more strategically and not just shoot, buy. It's like, yeah. But you can start at a bare minimum and work your way up pretty fast if you know how to do it strategically. If I knew what I know now, I could probably do it a lot faster.
Mhm.
But I mean, that goes for anything. Ben, I got a short list here of the best gear purchases that I've ever made, at least what I could think of when I was doing it. First one is obviously, as I kind of went over it a bunch of times, is this tripod. Still shooting on it today. It was super sturdy, you know. It was from a reputable company, and I got one that was like, it was a bit over my budget. I spent like all the money I had on it at the time. But it's lasted me years. It's still going, and it's probably going to go until like forever. I bought another tripod for my FS5 because I knew that that tripod, the bigger one, I didn't even necessarily need it because the FS5 is not a heavy camera. I bought this new tripod because I knew it would fit into other people's workflow. So this tripod right here, the little baby one, it's still being used, and not because, but it's not my main tripod, but not because it's not useful. Still very useful. And it's always good to have two tripods if you're doing corporate stuff too, but
Not the one with the hook.
not the one with the hook, of course. And as I covered, obviously the Dana Dolly. The Dana Dolly was like huge. I've used it on plenty of my own personal productions. I've rented it a million times. And it's such a good way to upgrade my production quality. But like, I'm not saying, like, again, I'm not saying go buy a Dana Dolly. You could buy a Dana Dolly if you find that that's what people want in your local industry. Chances are, unless you're working on bigger productions, no, you're never going to be able to rent a Dana Dolly. You need to know those kinds of people, and you need to be in those kinds of circles. But I don't know, if those kinds of people are in a Facebook group that you're on, you could always post it in the Facebook group. But you don't want to give any, if you don't have it and you give someone else that idea, they're going to buy it first.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
If they have more connections than you, then nobody's going to rent from you. So
Be smart about it.
you got to be really smart about it. But you know, this is, again, good example of tapping into your local industry. The Canon Rebel T3i. I didn't really touch on this too much, but this thing, even by today's standards, is a fantastic camera, and I would recommend that. Like, if you, I wouldn't recommend you buy this camera as your first camera, in my opinion.
There are
But
better cameras nowadays.
There are, but if you, I'm sure you could find one of these for nothing. Let's look it up right now. Kijiji.ca, doopy doo. Like, you could use this to jump your start, to shoot your, like, to make a career right now. You just need like some basic lighting. You don't need 4K. Don't just go out and get something because it's 4K. T3i, Canon EOS Rebel T3i with 8. Wow, it's still selling for $600. That's expensive. for a T3i. This one's selling $300 with 3 lenses. Man, you could shoot so much shit on this fucking camera. Or 2 lenses. It's got 2 zooms. You could do corporate work on that. You could make money. You could make a living off of this and a $200 Amazon light set. You wouldn't even need audio. I know audio is super, super important, but there's plenty of things that require no audio. And if you do need audio for the specific shoot, you can spend like another $100 on a cheap shotgun mic. You get a cheap shotgun mic for $30 now that's just as effective as the one that I bought back in the day that I spent like $300 on. Yeah, cheap shotgun mic for literally like $30. It's more about the vicinity on the audio than it is necessarily about the mic quality in most cases. You just need to get close to your subject. You can get a cheap shotgun mic, like a cheaper version of the Rode Micro ME or whatever.
Or just do the Amazon Labs.
Yeah, and then
hook it right up to the camera.
Right, exactly. Again, Amazon Lab, hook it up right up to the camera. I got this janky splitter, so I could have 2 mics going into one stereo input. So you got the shotgun mic going into the left channel, and then you got the lav going into the right channel. So you have redundancy without spending any extra money. Like it was basically nothing for the cable to do that. Like you could have a career with basically nothing. It's all about strategizing. Not only your gear, honestly, a big part of it is strategizing your gear, because you could take this gig. You can take this gig. Let's say you've already done 1 gig and you paid off your T3i kit and your lights and everything. You've made like $1,000 in the film industry, and you have like an okay kit. Now you're even. Anything you do now from now on is a profit. You could definitely make a career off that, 100%. So T3i was a fantastic camera, even by today's standards, with color and everything.
Fortunately, yours is gone now.
Yes. FS5 II. Yeah, I sold it. I feel bad about that. I should have kept it, but I needed money at the time. I wasn't too good at leveraging myself back then. FS5 has gotten me lots of gigs. Again, fits into a lot of people's workflow. And it's great on my own personal projects because I can output RAW, record it on the Shogun, whatever. You guys don't care. Shogun Inferno, kind of already covered this. Fantastic. Like, here it is. See, this guy's using it. This is my Shogun Inferno that I rented to the production. And I was the second AC, so I'm slating and stuff, and he's focus pulling. He's using my shit. And I had a Mafer clamp that I bought with it. I made sure you could like mount it and stuff, spend a little extra money on it. Renting it to the production. I don't think I made a shit ton of money on the rentals for that one because they were like my buddies.
And it was a fairly small.
Yeah. But still, making money that I wouldn't have made otherwise.
Yeah.
And ultimately paying that off. And still using it today as a useful piece of kit. And then, another thing, probably the best thing that I've ever invested in was just like all my lighting. Every light that I've ever bought has, except for the little tiny lights that go on your camera. Those are the ones that I see people buy the most because they're cheap and they're accessible, but they are useless.
Like the flash?
No, they're like, it'd be like this, like an LED light, a constant LED light. Then they're small and they come with like a little hot shoe mount usually. Aperture makes a bunch that are RGB that are really cool. Those, I would say they're valuable to buy as an extra, but I would not buy one of those. Don't make that your first light purchase. The amount of people I see on Twitter and YouTube who are buying those as like their main lights, it's fucking useless. You'll never make $1 off that light. And I know not everything is about making $1, but save those purchases for later when you're making the dollars. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Like if you have the money to invest in that, take that money and put it into a cheap Amazon light kit. You can even get cheaper ones than $200. Get one big softbox. That would get you would make so much more money off of a softbox than you would that takes forever to set up. And it comes with some shitty like $2 stand from Cowboy Studio or newer or whatever. And it has like fluorescent lights in it.
Just give yourself more setup time.
Exactly. Or like pre-set it up and leave it set up in your car. I've done that because I'm like, I don't, it might look stupid, but you can set up fast. You can get the job done. You get the money. Like,
get the money.
Get that fucking money. So yeah, don't buy those. I'd say those are the lights that I don't use. I use those very little. I use, my big lights more because they're just more useful. I use those little ones occasionally. But I guess Shay, I'm in a unique position where I have a gaffer as like a really good friend. So he brings a lot of those like fun lights. But I mean, again, you can invest in those lights, little aperture lights. invest in those later. Right now, just go to Amazon and get like we saw one light for $50. It was a softbox. Fucking buy that. It's the same price. I'm pretty sure those little aperture lights are like $50. I think those are such a stupid waste of money unless you're just doing YouTube videos and stuff. That's fine. It's okay in the context of like that.
But if you want to make money off of your gear,
If you're
that's
using-
not how you do it.
No, if you're trying to like actually have a career in this, then you're wasting your fucking time. So
And money.
yeah, exactly. Buy things that you can like light other people with, and you'd be happy to like show up on a corporate shoot with. They don't know that it's like that Newer is like a shitty brand. You know, they don't know that like Cowboy Studio is a shitty brand. They're just people that want to give you money. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they're
That
not going to
one-
know the specifics. They're just going to know, hey, that's a big light.
Right, exactly. They just want you to do a good job, and as long as you can deliver on that product effectively, that should be your main goal. It shouldn't be to have the name brand thing. It shouldn't be to have the aperture thing. By the way, Polar Pro fucking sucks. I'm killing my brand or my relationship with them before I even have a
Relationship?
I'm killing my relationship with them before I even have one or before I even have anything, because I so don't believe in their product. If you're going to buy some filters, don't buy that, just all the name brand shit. I'm not saying Polar Pro is like horrible. There's just better value out there. And same with Aperture. Aperture is a fantastic company. I love their lights, but it's not always the way to go. It's not always the thing that you should buy just because all the YouTubers are buying it. Drives me crazy. That was a bit of a rant. RoboCups, we already talked about that. It was fucking great. Quality camera hardware is really important because it's something you'll use forever on your career. If you're ever doing AC work, like I do, or even DPing stuff, you'll use the camera hardware. So like rods and like 15, like just rods and stuff, things that you'll use. Cat's just using this place as a jungle gym as usual. So yeah, that's really important. I got this the Rock and Roller multi-cart. This thing was something I invested in later. You don't need it, definitely, but like,
Just handy.
oh man, when you start collecting gear, yeah, your back really, really suffers when you're doing, and especially if it's low budget stuff that you have to do yourself, or you can't hire enough crew to bring your gear in and
And
stuff.
if you live in an apartment where you don't have an elevator.
Yeah, this is huge. So yeah, this is just like gear.
like
This is
this
just my gear now.
Yeah, okay.
Right, yeah, okay. So this is just the gear that I have now. Finally, it's
An
like this
actual computer.
started from the bottom, now we here. I'm not gonna take credit for all this. Everything here is mine except for this lens. That's Shay's. I just wanted to get a cooler lens. This is actually for a video that I'm yet to release. It's coming out very soon. This is part of an animation that I'm doing. That's part of promo for that video. And this is also Shay's battery. But like the battery mounts and everything, all that shit's mine. I use the battery mounts on other shoots for other people's gear because I rig up cameras essentially when I'm ACing. That's like my job. So I need lots of camera rigging stuff. Yeah, you know, that's my follow focus and all that shit. That's like stuff that I rent to productions, make money off of the follow focus. You know, this is just a top down shit. This is just me humble bragging. Not so humble bragging. Nice computer. But the computer helps me make money too. It is a gradual, they're all, that's the thing. It's all gradual upgrades. But it's not as gradual as people lead you to believe. And also to people who just want to be YouTubers or influencers or whatever, if you have a 4K camera and you have any aspiration to be in the video industry, you can still be a YouTuber and like get clients and shit. Like, why would you not? Go make some fucking money. I see a lot of people like on Twitter complaining about not having enough money to buy gear and shit. I saw it today. I'm not gonna mention who it was because I don't want any bad blood. But I see so much stupid shit on Twitter from like these YouTube filmmakers and people who want to be them, but they don't understand. Maybe it's not that they understand, but I don't know. I don't think they understand that there's so many different ways to make money in film, and it doesn't mean you have to detract from your main goal. Me being a camera assistant just doesn't detract from my main goal. It helps me learn how a set works, and ultimately it makes me better at DPing and directing, you know? So like if your goal is to be an influencer, if you don't want to be on set and stuff, I highly recommend you just do it anyway. Like just go on set and just try and leverage your gear in some ways, because the benefits are so huge and you can get so much gear without spending any money. You can get great film contacts. You can learn a lot of stuff, all if you just like take some time to leverage your relationships and your gear in a way that helps you, you know?
It makes you the money.
Yeah. Rather than just crossing your fingers and hoping and praying that, you know, oh, I bought the T3i. Hopefully someone hires me because they see my demo reel and it's so good. And why wouldn't someone hire me because I'm so good at what I do? There's like 10,000 other people that are doing things that are just as good as you, and they have less or more gear than you, and everyone has the same opportunity to make that money, but you need to take that time and that initiative to leverage it, And this isn't a definitive guide in any way.
There is no one way to succeed in the film industry.
There is no one way, but I'm just hoping that this gets people thinking a little bit more strategically about how they're buying gear and understanding that the gear really, really, really matters to the rest of your career and how your career is shaping right now. And that doesn't mean you have to buy the best gear, but you need to understand how that gear can benefit you and how you can leverage that current gear and your relationships to ultimately get more gear, and that other gear will lean to more relationships. It is game. You got to gamify it in a way of sort of like understanding what you have and what other people want. What do
you need? Fill a need.
Exactly. And this might sound very obvious to some people, but I've talked with so many new filmmakers that don't think of it this way, and that's fine. It took me a really long time to understand that too.
Like, obviously, it took a while.
It took a really long time. But hopefully this can kind of accelerate some people's growth, and they can stop asking me why I have so much camera gear. It's a dumb question. I got it from working. That's how you do it.
Bought it with the money that I made.
Exactly. But again, you don't have to have money to get a bunch of camera gear. That's my point. You don't have to have any money. You can do it with, you have to invest at some point, but ultimately your biggest investment will be the first investment you make. The first investment in your camera gear is the biggest investment you're going to make. It's the first camera, the first lights, and the first audio. That is the biggest investment. Everything after that can buy itself effectively. And then everything beyond that, that's a bonus, that's not part of that core group of gear, can be residual income for you, essentially. So yeah, that's all I got. Hopefully that was interesting for some people. Hopefully that was valuable. I think that's what I think. Is that valuable for you, Bree? You've heard all this stuff before. You gonna be a filmmaker now?
Oh yeah.
Join the film industry.
I'm gonna.
You can do that with
director.
You can do that with makeup too. You can be a director.
That's what you're saying. Everyone wants to be a director or DP.
Yeah.
That's me.
Pick a skill. Pick a skill, y'all. Pick something that you can do on set that's not, I think, looking at the way that Shay operates, being a gaffer, aspiring to be a gaffer is great. You work directly with the DP. You get to interact with the light that he wants. So you understand how to shape light, like way better than anyone else. Makes you a really good DP. Being in camera department, in my opinion, is really good, but you're more expendable. Like, yeah, it's harder to build a relationship with the DP as an AC, in my opinion, because you're not necessarily a creative role. You just have to be really good at anticipating their needs and managing logistics in a really good way, but it's not creative. It really helps if you're skilled at focus pulling. I wouldn't say I'm the best, but I'd say I'm pretty good when it comes to other people at my level. But just find a skill, find something that you resonate with on set, or something that's adjacent to something you want to learn. Either way, if you get on set in any aspect, even like I said, even if you don't want to be on set for your career, I don't want to be a set guy. I don't want to join the union or anything, but it benefits you so much from learning how to leverage your gear, building relationships, understanding how productions work so you can do that on your own productions, and then translate even gear purchases and stuff onto your own productions based on how they do it and their needs. So many benefits. Anyway, man, this was a long ass fucking podcast. It was almost 3 hours long. If you listen to this far, you better have some questions for me. But if you got any questions, let me know in the comments below. Follow me on Instagram at FilmMiker. FilmMiker at FilmMiker. Next episode, I think, is probably going to be with Shay. I've got some fun stuff planned. It's going to be a little bit more gamey and less informative.
Speaking of gamey,
Shit. Oh, yeah. We were going to do the Pictionary thing. I think it's too late at this point.
again,
Yeah.
we're going to have to push it off.
We're going to have to, we'll find a time to do the Pictionary game. We've prepped for it. It's really fun. It's going to be so much fun. I am so excited to do the Pictionary game.
So keep tuning in, because
Yeah.
one of these days we'll get around to doing it.
Yeah. So thank you, everybody. Thanks for sticking around. Like I said, next episode's probably going to be with Shay. We're probably going to talk more.
There's going to be a lot more back and forth than there was with this one.
Yeah, it'll be less me ranting. It'll be funny, though. I think next episode is going to be really funny. And then I'm going to try, we'll see when we get Grant on the podcast. Grant, fantastic local DPs, done a bunch of cool stuff, owns Alexa Mini LF. He's part of the, I think it's called the Canadian Cinematographers Guild or something. But he's a fantastic guy to learn things from, and he's fun.
Very smart guy.
He's fun, and we're gonna have fun on that podcast too. I'm gonna make it a little bit. I'm gamifying every single podcast from now on. So, except for this one, apparently.
Yeah, exactly. This one's just very informative.
Anyway, whatever. We've been closing off for a while, so I'm
Okay.
just gonna hit the music.
Here we go. Bye.
Oh shit! I don't know what to say. Let's start that over. Big old truck, big old dick.
Ice cold beer.
Hot chick. Grab my booty. I'll grab yours. I won't tell. So your family doesn't think you're a whore. Is that too racy? I'm speaking from the perspective of someone who's from the country, okay? I don't think that someone's a whore just because they have sex. I have sex. Does that make me a whore? Bree, does that make me a whore?
Yeah.
Thanks for sticking around, all you people. This one goes out. Well, I thought this would be so much funnier when I had it in my head. Hey everybody, the show is over. Just go back to doing whatever you were doing before this podcast, or keep doing what you're doing without this podcast, probably doing dishes, or maybe taking a shit, or maybe you're in the car going to take a shit. You know, that's the kind of stuff I do when I listen to podcasts. Actually, shitting while you're doing podcast or listening to podcasts is kind of boring. I usually watch YouTube videos. Maybe in the shower. Have a shower. Listen to this podcast. Continue having a shower after you're done listening to this podcast. Thanks for listening. Talking about cameras. Why have you clicked away from this video?
Like, comment, and subscribe.
Like, comment, and subscribe. Available on Spotify and Google Play Music, Google Podcasts, and YouTube. And the song is over.
Okay.
All right, this is it.
I think that's done.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
You're not a whore if you have sex, just so you know.
No.
Or if you grab booty, or if you have a big old dick, or you have a truck, or a hot chick.
Or a nice cold beer.
Or an ice cold beer. That's kind of fun. Let's do that one. Ice cold beer. Big old truck. Big old dick. We're gonna fuck. In the back of my truck. We're gonna fuck in the back of my truck. Looking at the stars and stuff. Oh my god, is that a shooting star? No, it's an aeroplane. Oh, okay. Anyway, what do you do for work? I'm a prostitute. You picked me up at the 7-Eleven. Oh yeah, I forgot. Time to fuck. Oh, I mean, actually, you're not a prostitute. This is just consensual sex between two people that love each other. And that's what country music's all about. Having sex in a truck.
Yep.
Is this podcast over?
I think it's over.
All right, cutting.